Chapter 958. Block and Counterattack. The dark gold sword light was extremely sharp. It contained the mountain-quaking energy and 4 profound meanings. Its sharpness was even sharper, and its cutting power was astonishing. It flashed as if it could break through space. It was extremely bright and beautiful. 4th grade defensive counterattack sword technique. Cloud Break Flash. As he went through life and death battles, Chu Mu's mastery of the Cloud Break Flash grew deeper and deeper. His grasp of timing became more and more exquisite. Defensive counterattack sword techniques were different from direct attack sword technique. It focused more on timing. It could only be used at the most appropriate and critical moment to have a miraculous effect and kill a strong enemy. Defense and counterattack sword skills were all about blocking first and then counterattacking. Blocking was about technique. If one was knocked away by the opponent, one would not be able to counterattack. Counterattacking was about timing. At the moment of blocking, there would be a powerful recoil. When one leaned back, one would have to adjust one's posture and the angle of the sword. It had to be stable, and then bounce back in an instant. Combining the sword intent, the 4 profound powers, the mountain-shaking energy, and the sword yuan into one, it would explode in an instant. With the strongest explosive power and the fastest speed, one would throw out a sword attack. This was the Cloud Break Flash. Cloud Break Flash, because of the integration of the mountain-quaking energy, was far more powerful than Cloud Break Sky Sea. It could be considered a powerful sword technique between a 4th grade and a 5th grade sword technique. It was powerful, but its weakness was that it could only be used in close combat. He had a long-range attack sword technique, a defensive counterattack sword technique, a purely defensive sword technique, and a sword technique for body movement. He had basically achieved all of these aspects. The powerful silver knife mantis was beheaded by Chu Mu's Cloud Break Flash. Its corpse fell to the ground and was still twitching. It showed the powerful vitality of an immemorial beast. The Slaughter God weapon was activated. A wisp of gray air floated out of the silver knife mantis corpse and was absorbed by Chu Mu to nourish his sword embryo. Yesterday, Ba Wang had swallowed enough immemorial beast flesh to transform into a blood-red cocoon and evolve once again. Chu Mu knew that when Ba Wang broke out of the cocoon, his strength would change dramatically. At that time, he would enter the king level. All in all, Chu Mu was quite satisfied with the results of this period of training. Every day, he had fought against powerful ancient beasts and was even chased by powerful king-level beasts. He had walked on the edge of life and death, stimulated his potential, and created a defensive counterattack sword skill, Cloud Breaking Flash. He had also obtained some elixirs. Now, he only had the earth root left to refine the great amplification pill. Ba Wang had accumulated enough energy to break out of the cocoon once more. The Kamihira sword embryo continued to absorb negative energy and gradually grew. Now, it had reached the level of a high-grade sword. In terms of hardness and toughness, it was comparable to an ordinary top-grade sword. Its potential was astonishing. His figure flashed, and he left the silver knife mantis corpse to avoid attracting more powerful immemorial beasts. After stopping, he reached into his chest and took out the Secret Order of Fortune. Because of this Secret Order of Fortune, when he was in a life-or-death situation last time, he was lucky to have shown his trump card decisively and killed a powerful enemy. He also deterred an even more powerful enemy and destroyed their battleship to escape. Secret Order of Fortune. Heavenly Platform of Fortune. When will it open? Chu Mu murmured in a voice that only he could hear. Suddenly, the Secret Order of Fortune reacted as if it had heard Chu Mu's voice. It buzzed and emitted a faint light which surprised Chu Mu. Could it be that a second creation secret order has appeared within 10 miles? Chu Mu had a deep impression of the last pursuit. Suddenly, the light on the Secret Order of Fortune separated and condensed into a beam, shooting towards Chu Mu's forehead. It was impossible to dodge, and it directly shot into his head. Fireworks exploded in his mind and condensed into 6, 7-colored words. 3rd of March, the heavenly platform will open. 3rd of March, the heavenly platform will open. Chu Mu murmured, and his eyes suddenly shone with a fierce light. At the same time, in various parts of West Lake region, all the swordsmen who possessed creation's secret writ were the same as Chu Mu. 6, 7-colored words appeared in their mind. 3rd of March, the heavenly platform will open. Ha ha ha, the heavenly platform of fortune is finally opening. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. Humph, heavenly platform of fortune, I will definitely use you to break through and comprehend the mystery of fortune. Heavenly platform of fortune, here I come. The disciples of the Broken Star Building, the Flying Heaven Pavilion, the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect, the Black Extreme Palace, and the Myriad Mountains Villa who had the secret order of fortune, as well as the swordsmen of other forces and families who had the secret order of fortune, were all overjoyed. They had been waiting for this day since the moment they had obtained the secret order of fortune. Once the heavenly platform of fortune opened and they entered it to comprehend the mystery of fortune and the essence of fortune, their future path would be even wider. Swordsmen who could obtain the secret order of fortune were usually geniuses among geniuses. Each of them had outstanding talent and strength among those of the same level. They were dragons among men. The 6 rainbow-colored words in his mind dissipated and returned to normal. The secret order of fortune in his hand trembled again and shot out a beam of light, pointing in a direction, as if it was telling the possessor that the heavenly platform of fortune was there. Finally having a target, Chu Mu began to fly towards the direction of the creation's secret token's light beam, using his movement technique. Get ready to move out and kill the possessor of the secret order of fortune. While the 100 possessors of the secret order of fortune set off for the heavenly platform of fortune, there were also many people with evil intentions who were preparing to intercept them on the way and seize the secret order of fortune for themselves or their descendants. They could also sell it. It should be known that the secret order of fortune that had been auctioned off at the Skyway auction house in West Tiger City was bought by someone for 50 kilograms of liquefied yuan. What kind of concept was 50 kilograms of liquefied yuan? The so-called liquefied yuan was the liquid of pure yuan qi. Some liquefied yuan qi was astonishingly rich and did not contain the slightest impurities, so it could be directly absorbed. In addition to the natural liquefied yuan in some excellent holy grounds, there was another way to obtain yuan liquefied yuan, which was yuan crystals. Moreover, it had to be top-grade yuan crystals. 10,000 top-grade yuan crystals could be refined into 500 kilograms of yuan liquefied yuan. 500 kilograms of yuan liquefied yuan was equivalent to 1 million top-grade yuan crystals. The exchange rate between top-grade yuan crystals and upper-grade yuan crystals was 1 to 100 under normal circumstances. In other words, 1 million top-grade yuan crystals could be exchanged for 100 million upper-grade yuan crystals. Of course, under normal circumstances, very few people would exchange top-grade yuan crystals for upper-grade yuan crystals. This was because the energy contained in top-grade yuan crystals was richer and purer than that of upper-grade yuan crystals. Most importantly, top-grade yuan crystals could be used to extract yuan liquefied yuan, while upper-grade yuan crystals could not. According to the equivalent exchange rate, 10,000 top-grade yuan crystals were equivalent to 1 million upper-grade yuan crystals. However, 1 million upper-grade yuan crystals could not be refined into 500 kilograms of yuan liquefied yuan. This was determined by the quality. Therefore, if one wanted to use upper-grade yuan crystals to purchase yuan liquefied yuan, 500 kilograms of yuan liquefied yuan would cost at least 1.5 million upper-grade yuan crystals. Even if it was a friendship price, the internal price would not be lower than 1.2 million upper-grade yuan crystals. A secret order of fortune auctioned off for 50 kilograms of yuan liquefied yuan. This price was truly astonishing. Small clans and forces simply could not afford it. The 5 major forces each had 10 secret orders of fortune. The Heavenly Sword Hall had stipulated that they could not have more, so they would not participate in the auction. However, there were still wealthy forces that could take out 50 kilograms of yuan, liquefied yuan. Of course, if a disciple of the 5 major forces who possessed a secret order of fortune was intercepted and killed, and the order was taken away by someone else, then it was their own bad luck. The 5 major forces would naturally investigate and seek revenge, but that would also be a very embarrassing matter. In short, the secret order of fortune was very important. Unleashing his speed, Chu Mu floated forward like a wisp of smoke. Silently, he advanced on the land of the West Tiger domain. In the mountains and forests, he also spread out the power of his divine sense, scanning ahead and carefully feeling every aura fluctuation. Once there was an aura fluctuation that could threaten him, Chu Mu would avoid it in advance to avoid encountering overly powerful ancient vicious beasts or falling into a bitter battle. The 3rd day of the 3rd month, the opening of the heavenly platform. The 3rd day of the 3rd month was a period of time. After calculating, there was still about a month left. Chu Mu had to reach the heavenly platform of fortune within this month. Otherwise, if he missed it, he would have to wait for another 100 years. 100 years. At that time, who knew what realm Chu Mu would have reached? He had to hurry and reach the heavenly platform of fortune as soon as possible. The secret order of fortune was very precious. Most of the owners of the secret order of fortune were escorted by powerful king-level experts. The owners of the secret order of fortune also had powerful life-saving trump card. 10 days later, Chu Mu rushed out of the dense mountain forest and entered a small town, Eastern Gate Town. After resting for a while, he immediately left Eastern Gate Town and moved forward again. In Eastern Gate Town, a group of people locked onto Chu Mu. After Chu Mu left Eastern Gate Town, they immediately followed him. Suspicious target found. Follow him. Chu Mu was not the first person to be tracked. In fact, any young swordsman who entered Eastern Gate Town and left quickly would be carefully observed. After the observation, they would decide whether to lock onto him as a target and then follow him for further observation. As soon as he left Eastern Gate Town, Chu Mu felt that he was being followed. The speed of his movement technique abruptly increased by 30%, allowing him to advance at an even faster speed. The speed of the pursuers also increased, but none of the pursuers had reached the king rank. In terms of speed, they simply couldn't compare to Chu Mu. Very quickly, Chu Mu lost them. Chu Mu did not take this to heart and focused on his journey. Late at night, Chu Mu stopped and started a bonfire. He took out a large piece of fresh meat from his interspatial ring. It was cut from some of the immemorial fierce beasts he had killed before. It was the most delicious part of meat. Although he could absorb yuan qi of heaven and earth, so that he would not be hungry and satisfy the basic needs of his body, the desire for good food was often one of the things that people liked the most. The feeling of chewing delicious food in the mouth was very wonderful. Chapter 959. 10 people. They were dressed in black tights, and their faces were also covered in black. Only their eyes were exposed. Their eyes were sharp and cold, and all of them were fixed on Chu Mu. The 10 sharp auras were like 10 invisible swords, almost piercing Chu Mu, but Chu Mu did not seem to notice it at all. He was eating the delicious barbecue. "Little brother, you are really in a good mood." A hearty laugh was heard. A man in a black robe walked out from the darkness behind the 10 men in black. He was also wearing a black robe that covered his whole body. "What's the matter?" Chu Mu would not pretend to be polite since he did not come with good intentions. "Nothing big. I just saw that little brother's face is extraordinary. You are a dragon among men, and your achievements in the future will be extraordinary. I specially came to make a friend," the black-robed man said with a smile. His tone was very gentle, as if he really came to make friends. "What price?" Chu Mu said indifferently. Such a straightforward answer startled the black-robed man. He immediately reacted and said with a smile, "It's easy to talk to smart people. There's no need to pay any price. Because our sect has lost an important treasure, we were ordered by the sect master to search. As long as little brother allows us to search your body, it will be fine." Since he had said so, there was no need for him to say anything else. Chu-Mu threw down the barbecue in his hand. His sword origin and physical strength burst out. He applied the mountain-shaking energy to a part of his muscles, causing his speed to explode to the extreme in an instant. The no-return sword was unsheathed. The extremely sharp sword light reflected a layer of residual red under the night sky of the bonfire, like the afterglow of the setting sun. It was extremely sad and beautiful. Fast, it was really too fast. Moreover, it was so sudden that it caught people off guard. According to the progress, Chu-Mu would at least reply with one more sentence before the battle could start. Unexpectedly, the other party was so decisive. He directly drew his sword, and it was so fast, so sharp, and so stunning. However, this breathtaking sword light brought about death. Death came in an instant. The black-robed man turned pale with fright, but his strength was extraordinary, and he did not underestimate Chu-Mu. His heart was already prepared, and his reaction was very fast. He quickly retreated behind the black-robed man, and narrowly avoided the sword light. However, the sword light suddenly changed its direction and stabbed towards the black-robed man. Chu-Mu could tell that among the 11 people, the 10 men in black were the subordinates, while the black-robed man was the leader. To kill the enemy, one must first kill the general. Chu-Mu's speed was extremely fast, and the black-clothed man's reaction speed was only a bit slower than the black-clothed man's. He pulled out his sword, and 10 sword light burst out in the dark night, stabbing towards Chu-Mu at the same time. It was simple, direct, and filled with killing intent. However, Chu-Mu's speed was even faster. In an instant, he escaped from the 10 sword light of the 10 men in black, and his sword attacked the black-robed man without any hindrance. The black-robed man also pulled out his sword in an instant. As he retreated, tyrannical power gathered on the sword, and sword intent and ultimacy burst out in an instant. He was about to perform a sword technique to kill Chu-Mu. In an instant, the sword in Chu-Mu's hand flew out, and its speed doubled. The black-robed man did not have time to react. The sword technique that he was about to perform died in his belly, and his throat was directly pierced by Chu-Mu's no-return sword. He could not say anything. The sword intent and ultimacy that had just gathered suddenly collided with each other, and then exploded. The powerful explosion swept in all directions. Chu-Mu quickly retreated, and the sword light on his left hand was driven by the sword fingers. It quickly circled around his body, and the power of the explosion was weakened inch by inch. The 10 black-robed men did not expect this at all. They were immediately hit by the power of the explosion, and hurriedly defended themselves. They only saw the sword light flash in front of them, and then there was only darkness in the sky. One sword light killed 10 people. Chu-Mu did not know the background of these people, but he was sure of one thing, and that was that they were after the secret order of creation on him. In other words, they were after the secret order of creation, or any secret order of creation. With this thought in mind, Chu-Mu became vigilant. Before this, he had not thought about it so thoroughly. He did not expect that there would be people who specifically wanted to kill people who had the secret order of creation. In fact, this group of black-robed men was probably guessing that he might have the secret order of creation, but they were not sure. If they were sure, they would not have sent these 11 people. They might even have sent a king realm expert to deal with him. His movements were very practiced. He plundered the cultivation talent of the 11 people, operated the slaughter divine weapon, took away their interspatial rings, destroyed the corpses, and extinguished the bonfire and all other traces. After doing all this, Chu-Mu quickly left and hurried through the night. Since he had encountered people who wanted to snatch the secret order of creation this time, there was no guarantee that there would not be a second or third time. It was best to get to the heavenly creation platform as soon as possible. Once he reached the heavenly creation platform, even if someone wanted to snatch the secret order of creation, they would not be so brazen. Very quickly, the sky brightened. Chumu was still on his way. His speed was very fast, but he encountered a second assassination attempt. He did not know if the people who intercepted him this time were in cahoots with the 11 people he had met in the middle of the night, but Chumu soon found out. This was because the moment the other party saw him, they immediately attacked. They drew their swords, and the sword light flashed, shooting in all directions. They should be accomplices. Otherwise, they would not have attacked so directly. The other party was not polite and did not show any mercy. Chumu did not show any mercy either. He performed the sword controlling technique and used the other royal grade sword to perform the 4th grade sword skill, Thunderstorm. A crazy and terrifying storm instantly swept out. Dark clouds filled the sky, and destruction was coming. Then, he used the 4th grade sword skill, Cloud-Piercing Sky. A group of black-clothed people was swept into the thunderstorm and strangled. Then, the thunderstorm was broken and torn apart by the dark golden moon. Under the 2 sword skills, dozens of black-clothed people died. Under the sword light of the sword controlling technique, several black-clothed people were also killed. However, this time, there were hundreds of black-clothed people trying to kill Chumu. Among them, there was a portion that was extremely powerful. Sword light flashed and the sword chi was cold. Terrifying sword skills bombarded Chumu one after another, trying to kill him. There were 2nd grade and 3rd grade sword skills. They were powerful and bombarded from all directions. There was no way to dodge. Chumu immediately performed the defensive sword skill, Immovable Mountain, to resist the bombardment of the sword skills. Hundreds of sword skills bombarded Chumu from all directions. Most of them bombarded Chumu and exploded. In their imagination, Chumu should have been killed. Countless clouds of dust billowed in the air, covering the surroundings densely. It was impossible to see clearly. When the black-clothed people paused, a sword light rushed out of the dust at an extremely fast speed. It was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. It got close and started to fight. The 5 elements sword skills, wind and thunder sword skills, cloud sword skills, ice sword skills, and sky sword skills were used alternately. The sword controlling technique was performed and circled around him to resist the attacks and kill the enemies. 1 step, 1 sword, 1 kill. In just a moment of trance, another 20 to 30 people died under Chumu's sword. Formation. A low roar rang out. Immediately, the remaining black-clothed people shifted their feet. As their bodies changed, they formed sword formations that surrounded Chumu. The sword formations activated and began to besiege Chumu. Chumu circled around the sword formations. The sword controlling technique was activated. The sword in his hand didn't stop. He kept blocking and counterattacking while observing the changes of the sword formations. He had studied the sword formations. Although he didn't have a deep understanding, he was at the beginner level. Coupled with his strong comprehension, he soon deciphered the mystery of a sword formation. He immediately attacked and killed one of the black-clothed people. After breaking the sword formation, the other black-clothed people also died under Chumu's sword. Kill. Kill. The corpses fell one after another. Blood flowed from the wounds and dyed the ground red. Pieces of blood connected to each other and formed pools of blood. Chumu operated the slaughter god weapon and kept absorbing the negative aura. Strands of gray aura flew out from the corpses and into Chumu's body. In this battle, no one paid attention to this detail. The Kamihira sword embryo in his middle dantian was very happy. This was because the negative aura was continuously absorbed by the sword embryo and nourished its growth. Chumu wanted to use the heaven-seizing technique to steal the cultivation talent of these black-clothed people. Unfortunately, it was difficult to use the heaven-seizing technique, and required some time. In such a fierce battle, he couldn't steal at all. He could only wait until all the enemies were killed. Thinking of this, Chu Mu's heart was suddenly burning. Just by practicing the heaven-seizing technique, he estimated that it would take more than 10 years or even longer to raise his cultivation talent from the lower 5th grade to the lower 4th grade. However, if he stole the cultivation talent of others, the speed would be much faster. Previously, he had stolen 21 people's cultivation talent, which had increased Chu Mu's cultivation talent. However, whether it had reached the middle 5th grade, Chu Mu wasn't sure. However, he believed that once he stole the cultivation talent of these hundreds of black-clothed people, even if it didn't reach the upper 5th grade, it would at least reach the middle 5th grade. In this way, he might not need to painstakingly search for the earth root to refine the great amplification pill. In a short time, he could raise his cultivation talent to the 4th grade. Chu Mu broke another sword formation and killed some black-clothed people. Suddenly, a black figure rushed out of a sword formation at an astonishing speed and attacked from the sky. This sword was sharp to the extreme. It seemed to break through space and caused an incomparably sharp sound, showing its terrifying power. Sword skill, a close combat 4th grade sword skill. It was too fast. Chu Mu hurriedly used the immovable mountain defense and blocked the opponent's sword skill with his sword. The terrifying power of the collision caused a sharp chi wave to shoot out in all directions. The black-clothed people nearby were immediately affected and were injured one by one. The powerful recoil caused the black-robed man's entire body to tremble. Just as he was about to fly backwards, Chu Mu, because he was using immovable mountain, didn't move at all. However, in an instant, he turned it into a counterattack, causing all of his power to explode. The dark golden sword light flashed and directly split the black-clothed person in half from head to toe. Blood sprayed into the sky. Chapter 960. The sword light flashed and blood splattered across the sky. The last black-robed man fell under Chu Mu's sword. At a glance, the ground was littered with black corpses, one after another. Blood dyed the ground red and flowed like a river. Once the divine slaughter weapon was activated, a gray aura emanated from the corpses and flew toward Yi Shiwen. The sword embryo was very happy to be nourished. Chu Mu planned to use the heaven-seizing technique to plunder the cultivation talents of these black-robed men one by one. The heaven-seizing technique was indeed heaven-defying, but it had its limitations. He could only use it one at a time, and he had to come into contact with the corpses. The corpses had to be fresh and intact. Fresh meant that they had died not long ago and were less than an hour old. Intact meant that he could cut off their arms and legs, but he could not cut off their heads or split them into two halves. Chu Mu could plunder the cultivation talents of most of the corpses here. Just as he was about to start, suddenly 4 powerful auras shot over from afar like heavenly swords. They locked onto Chu Mu, causing his expression to change. The auras of 4 king-level experts. They did not come with good intentions. Chu Mu did not want to fight with 4 king-level experts. He could only reluctantly give up on the cultivation talents of the hundreds of corpses and their interspatial rings. His speed exploded as he soared into the sky. He used the imperial sword technique and flew away as fast as he could. At the same time, he threw the blood yang elixir into his mouth and used the Deshang's burning blood transformation. His speed increased by 3 times and he was extremely fast. He turned into a blood-red sword light and flew away. Not long after, 4 black-robed figures with golden edges landed in an arc looking at the black-robed men's corpses on the ground. Their anger and killing intent surged. However, the culprit that they had locked onto had escaped and disappeared without a trace. The culprit's speed was too fast. He was not inferior to them at all. In fact, he was much faster than them. The 4 sword of Gojoseon did not chase after him. Chu Mu stopped using the burning blood transformation. The blood essence he had consumed was not serious. He took the blood yang elixir and slowly recovered. After another hour, he landed. He had used up a lot of infinite desolation sword essence and needed to replenish it. As he executed his movement technique, he circulated his cultivation technique to absorb the heaven-earth essence chi. He even took out some high-grade essence crystals and crushed them to absorb them, speeding up the recovery of his sword essence. Previously, he had used up nearly 100,000 high-grade crystals to recover. However, after killing Zhao Qian, the sword of Gojoseon, and the other swordsmen, he had obtained a few 100,000 high-grade crystals. Now, he had more than 1,000,000 high-grade crystals. After the sword origin was restored, Chu Mu sped up and moved forward. The way to speed up was to use the mountain-shaking energy to vibrate his muscles at a high speed to generate an impact force and push his body forward. Chu Mu kept experimenting with which muscles could make him move faster and use less energy. As he sped up, he did not encounter any more assassins along the way. Unknowingly, time passed day by day. It was already close to the 3rd of March. Chu Mu began to feel a kind of guidance. It was as if there was a voice telling him which direction to go. He knew that it was the natural reaction of the creation's secret token in his arms as he approached the creation heavenly platform. When he arrived, Chu Mu also noticed that there were more people. Of course, most of them did not have the creation's secret token. Their purpose was just to watch. They wanted to see who had the creation's secret token and join in the fun. No matter what, the creation heavenly platform that opened once every 100 years was one of the grand events in the West Tiger territory. If he did not participate, he would be despised when he talked with others in the future. He would be at a disadvantage. As he continued to move forward, Chu Mu felt the creation's secret token in his arms vibrate again. This was a sign that other creation's secret tokens had appeared within a 10-mile radius. In other words, the creation heavenly platform was close. An octagonal platform stood on the ground. It was like a peerless divine sword that pointed to the sky. There were 333 steps on the platform. It went from the bottom all the way to the top of the platform. At this time, a large number of people had gathered below the platform. In the middle of this group of people, there was a middle-aged man with white hair on his temples. His long robe fluttered in the wind. Countless patterns vaguely formed the outline of a palace. When Chu Mu arrived, he saw the disciples of the Flying Heaven Pavilion in the clearly divided crowd. It's Chu Mu. At the same time, the people of the Flying Heaven Pavilion also noticed Chu Mu. Lu Yi, Wang Wei, Sun Yuan, Zhao Kong, Fang Qingtian, Lu Buping, Li Donghe, Xiao Ling, and a young swordsman that Chu Mu had never seen before. In addition, there were 3 elders of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Greetings to the 3 pavilion elders. Chu Mu walked over and saluted the 3 pavilion elders. You're finally here, one of the elders said with a smile. Along the way, there were people who tried to kill you. Did you encounter any of them? Another elder asked. Yes. Chu Mu nodded. He thought for a while. The black-robed men who tried to kill him and the black-robed men who tried to kill him after the auction in West Windtown probably came from the same force. Black Prison. You've proven your strength by being able to come here. You're qualified to become a disciple of the creation heavenly platform. The 3rd elder nodded and said. Chu Mu now understood that every disciple who obtained the creation's secret order would leave the Flying Heaven Pavilion one after another to gain experience. They would fight and protect their creation's secret order until they gathered at the creation heavenly platform. Only then could they prove that they were qualified to obtain the creation's secret order and enter the creation heavenly platform to comprehend the creation heavenly platform. If someone stole the creation's secret order, it was because they were not strong enough. The Flying Heaven Pavilion was like that, and so were the other 4 forces. Chu Mu hadn't guessed wrong. The young man standing with Lu Yi and the others was the chief disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion, Song Mo. When Chu Mu stared at Tsang Emo also stared at Chu Mu. He seemed to be very interested in Chu Mu. In his eyes, there was a sliver of fighting intent. Lu Yi and the others had already told Tsang Emo about Chu Mu. The Flying Heaven Pavilion had considered the distribution of the creation secret order. Tsang Emo was Soaring Heaven Court's first seat, so he would definitely get a piece. Lu Yi was second, Wang Wei was third, Sun Yuan was fourth, and Zhao Kong was fifth. Fang Qing Tian, Lu Buping, and Li Donghe were the new disciples of Soaring Heaven Court. Their sword intent had all reached the peak of rank 8. In terms of talent, they were comparable to Lu Yi Tsang Emo. Even though they had not cultivated for a long time and were not as strong as Lu Yi Tsang Emo, talent was more important in comprehending creation. Xiao Ling was the chief disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion, and he wasn't weak in any aspect. If it weren't for his talent, he could be ranked in the top 5 of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. It was normal for him to get a creation secret order. The Flying Heaven Pavilion had 10 disciples: Shattered Star Tower, Sky-Splitting Sword Sect, Extreme Black Palace, and Myriad Mountain Manor had 10 disciples each. Although the 5 major factions had different forms, they were equally matched in terms of strength. The 10 disciples who had obtained the creation secret token were about the same in terms of strength and talent. Of course, Chu Mu was an exception. Other than himself, no one knew the extent of his true talent. Apart from the 5 forces, there were also genius disciples from other forces and clans. The young swordsmen with creation's secret orders were also gathered here. At this moment, Chu Mu felt a sharp gaze filled with killing intent locking onto him. When he turned around, that gaze instantly shifted, but Chu Mu still managed to catch sight of its owner. It was a young sword of Gojoseon. Moreover, it was the same young sword of Gojoseon who had sent 2 sword of Gojoseon to deal with him. Meeting Chu Mu here, Li Tao was both angry and scared. Although his Li family wasn't weak, compared to the Flying Sky Pavilion, they were still inferior. The difference was huge. If Chu Mu wanted to borrow the power of the Flying Heaven Pavilion to take revenge, it wouldn't be a good thing for the Li clan. After taking a deep look at the other party, Chu Mu withdrew his gaze. He wasn't the kind of person who would cry to his elders and ask for revenge after being bullied. If he was bullied, Chu Mu's method was to fight back. Although he wasn't strong enough now, he would become stronger with time. At that time, he would have the ability to take revenge. Moreover, this young swordsman's strength was inferior to his. If the old man hadn't saved him that day, the young swordsman would have died. He didn't intend to use the power of the Flying Heaven Pavilion to solve this matter. Instead, he wanted to use his own means to fight back. The people from the 5 forces were the most concentrated. The other people with creation's secret orders were more scattered. Among them, there was one person who attracted the most attention. There was only one person. It was a young swordsman in a purple robe with golden lines on it. It looked like a real dragon soaring in the sky. It was vivid and lifelike. This person was tall and strong. His shoulders were broad as if they could hold up the sky. There was a tyrannical and fierce aura around him. He carried a palm-sized sword on his back. There was a golden dragon carving on the scabbard, as if a real dragon had fallen into a deep sleep and could wake up at any time. He was the center of attention. His aura was strong, as if he was the center of the earth. Many people couldn't help but focus on him. They were attracted by him. He was aggressive, domineering, fierce, and supremely arrogant. Many female swordsmen's eyes almost turned into hearts. They were deeply fascinated by this figure. Looking at him, many young male swordsmen also showed a desire to fight. Their intuition told them that this person must be very strong and a strong opponent. Chu Mu looked away and continued to scan. He fixed his eyes on a group of people in black robes. They all looked pale, as if they had lost a lot of blood. 3 of them looked to be in their 20s or 30s. Chu Mu also felt the aura of creation's secret orders from them. Chu Mu's intuition told him that this group of black-robed people was related to the group of black-robed people who had tried to kill him. Perhaps they were from the same organization, even though this group of people didn't show their heads. While Chu Mu was looking at them one by one, their eyes also fell on Chu Mu. They paused for a few breaths, as if they were evaluating him, and then looked away. Chapter 961. This high platform is the heavenly good fortune platform. The middle-aged man in the middle with a palace pattern on his robe said slowly. He was a member of Heavenly Sword Hall and was responsible for presiding over the opening of the heavenly good fortune platform that happened once every 100 years. With him here, no one dared to cause trouble. This was because this person was a commander of Heavenly Sword Hall and was very powerful. Most importantly, he was a member of Heavenly Sword Hall, and Heavenly Sword Hall was the most powerful existence among the human forces. The Heavenly Good Fortune platform opened once every 100 years. It was one of the grand events of the West Tiger Territory. When 100 disciples of the Heavenly Good Fortune platform grew up, there would be more powerhouses among the human race, constantly increasing the strength of the human race. In the past, there had been foreign races that had sneaked into the human territory and destroyed the opening of the Heavenly Good Fortune platform. Since that incident many years ago, Heavenly Sword Hall had been more vigilant. It seemed that only this middle-aged man was here, but in fact, the swordsmen of Heavenly Sword Hall were scattered everywhere. Moreover, before the Heavenly Good Fortune platform opened, they had already done their work and eliminated all foreign races from entering. Once they found anything, they would immediately deal with it without mercy. Under such circumstances, if the foreign races wanted to destroy the Heavenly Good Fortune platform, they would have to pay a great price. It wasn't worth it. Usually, the high platform won't appear. The middle-aged man from Heavenly Sword Hall continued, only when the 100-year period approaches will the Heavenly Good Fortune platform appear. The location is not fixed. Those who don't have the Heavenly Good Fortune token can't ascend the high platform. At this time, beside the Heavenly Good Fortune platform, a 100-meter tall stone tablet slowly appeared. It appeared from nothing and was filled with mystery. Everyone's eyes were attracted to the 100-meter tall stone tablet, especially Chu Mu and the others. They all stared with wide eyes at this magical scene. The stone tablet appeared out of thin air, standing on the ground beside the Heavenly Good Fortune platform. The stone tablet that has just appeared is called the Heavenly Good Fortune tablet. The middle-aged swordsman from Heavenly Sword Hall introduced. After this, your names will be recorded on the Heavenly Good Fortune tablet. Everyone's eyes focused on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. On the fully presented Good Fortune Heaven tablet, there were lines of text. From top to bottom, each line was a name. The first name on the list was Qianshan Wudao. Chu Mu had heard of this name before. He was the leader of the Western Tiger Five Absolutes, a disciple of the Sky-Splitting Sword sect. In second place was Qin Tianyi, a disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. The third name was Zhong Yuan, a disciple of Shattered Star Tower. Ranked fourth was Wan Feixian, a disciple of the Wanlai Villa. Ranked fifth was Sha Lu, a disciple of the Black Extreme Palace. Those 5 people were the 5 absolutes of the West Tiger Great Region, the strongest cultivators of the Sword of Gojoseon. They had also benefited from the Heavenly Creation platform. Among them, Qin Tianyi and Sha Lu were men, while Zhong Yuan and Wan Feixian were women. Below them were 95 names. There were disciples of the 5 great influences as well as disciples of other influences and families. All of them belonged to the West Tiger Great Region. Of the 100 names, the other 95 names weren't as famous as Qianshan Wudao, Qin Tianyi, and the others. After all, the 5 of them were called the West Tiger Five Absolute. Their brilliance overshadowed the other 95 names, causing them to be overshadowed. The ranking on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet is based on the speed at which you perceive the mysteries of good fortune. The first person to comprehend the mysteries of good fortune and leave the heavenly creation platform will have their name listed in the first line. The middle-aged man explained. In truth, there were no substantial benefits to having one's name listed in first place. It would only leave a deep impression on others. Being first was always something that people yearned for. It was something that countless people chased after generation after generation. The swordsmen that possessed the good fortune's secret tokens all revealed a sharp light in their eyes. Their blazing gazes fell on Qianshan Wudao's name. All of them were determined to be the first to comprehend the mysteries of good fortune and leave the heavenly creation platform. They would be ranked first, forever remembered by the world, and their names would be passed down through the ages. Even if they weren't ranked first, they could still be ranked second, third, fourth, or fifth. At the very least, they could create a new West Tiger 5 absolutes and be remembered by the world. Time slowly passed. The third day of the third month arrived. At that time, when the heavenly creation platform shook, Chu Mu and the others also felt the good fortune's secret tokens in their chests shake. Their entire bodies seemed to be drawn towards the heavenly creation platform, as if they wanted to throw themselves into it. The heavenly creation platform has opened. The disciples of good fortune may now ascend. The middle-aged man revealed a smile. First place belongs to me, revered dragon. The moment the middle-aged man's voice fell, a tall and sturdy young swordsman, wearing a purple-gold dragon robe, stepped out. He was fierce and domineering, as if he were the sole ruler of the world. In an instant, he was like a true dragon emerging from the sea, soaring through the highest heavens as he rushed towards the heavenly creation platform. The young swordsman in the purple-gold dragon robe moved. The other swordsmen that possessed the good fortune's secret tokens didn't fall behind. They felt that if they entered the heavenly creation platform a step earlier, they might be able to comprehend the mysteries of good fortune a step earlier. They might be able to leave the heavenly creation platform and obtain first place on the good fortune heavenly creation platform. In an instant, all 100 people rushed towards the heavenly creation platform, wanting to rush up the stairs and ascend to the top. Who dares to compete with me, revered dragon, for first place? Revered dragon's voice was incomparably domineering. It was like the roar of a dragon from the 9 heavens, bringing with it endless dominance and sharpness. It was like a heavenly sword had descended. At the same time, an incomparably terrifying sharpness gushed out from revered dragon's body. It was like a peerless divine sword had been unsheathed, wanting to break through the 9 heavens. This was sword intent. As soon as the terrifying sword intent appeared, it immediately caused everyone's expression to change drastically. Even the middle-aged man from Heavenly Sword Hall was no exception. This is early 9th Revolution sword intent. Early 9th Revolution sword intent. One by one, they cried out involuntarily. Their voices were filled with disbelief. Their expressions were also very exaggerated and distorted. The 9th Revolution sword intent had always only existed in legends. It might or might not exist, but at least in everyone's knowledge, the limit of sword intent and profound was the limit of the 8th Revolution. The limit of the 8th Revolution was a publicly recognized limit. It was a natural mode. The 9th Revolution that surpassed the limit of the 8th Revolution was to break through this natural mode. It's actually the early 9th Revolution sword intent. Chu Mu was also very surprised. However, on second thought, since he could refine his sword intent to the limit of the 9th Revolution, it was not unacceptable for someone to refine their sword intent to the early 9th Revolution. Thinking about it carefully, how many human swordsmen were there in the entire Archean world? It was impossible to calculate. Among so many swordsmen, it was not strange for 1, 2, or even 3 people to refine their sword intent to the 9th Revolution level. It was just that they were too rare. In addition, they had to hide to avoid being assassinated by the foreign races as a thorn in their flesh. For someone like revered dragon to display his sword intent so openly, It was definitely an anomaly. However, perhaps he had his own thoughts, or perhaps this was his character. In an instant, revered dragon, who had released the early Ninth Revolution sword intent, successfully intimidated the others. No one could compete with him for the right to be the first to rush up to the heavenly creation platform. In the blink of an eye, revered dragon rushed up the stairs of the heavenly creation platform. His body suddenly trembled, as if there was an invisible pressure acting on his body, causing his speed to suddenly drop. Revered dragon's expression changed, and he quickly adjusted to the sudden pressure. His speed increased again, but it was clearly not as fast as before. The other swordsmen also woke up from the shock of the early Ninth Revolution sword intent. When they saw revered dragon rush up the stairs, they hurriedly moved and rushed up with all their speed. To be honest, Chu-Mu was not stunned at that moment. He was just very surprised and was delayed for a moment. However, if he wanted to, he could also surpass revered dragon. However, for Chu-Mu, being the first to reach the heavenly creation platform was not attractive. Revered dragon. Early Ninth Revolution sword intent. The middle-aged man from the heavenly sword hall said in a low voice, revealing a thoughtful expression. Then, as if he had thought of something, a light flashed in his eyes. Could it be him? An elder of the sky-splitting sword sect immediately asked. The others also pricked up their ears, wanting to hear the background of this amazing revered dragon. This was because revered dragon was not a disciple of the five major forces. They also could not figure out which force or clan revered dragon belonged to in the West Tiger region. If I'm not wrong, revered dragon should not be from the West Tiger region, the middle-aged man from the heavenly sword hall said with a bitter smile. To be honest, although they were all from the human clan, it was inevitable that there would be differences between regions. He was from the West Tiger region and naturally hoped that there would be many geniuses in the West Tiger region. It would be best if there were some amazing geniuses like revered dragon. Unfortunately, until now, there had never been a swordsman who could refine his sword intent or profound meaning to the Ninth Revolution level in the West Tiger region. This was how intelligent beings were. They prioritized the glory of their race among the 100 clans, prioritized the glory of their region among the same clan, and prioritized the glory of the sect they belonged to among the same clan and region. Not from the West Tiger region. Everyone's expression froze when they heard this. Yes, revered dragon should be from the real dragon dynasty in the Chaos Territory. He is the real dragon crown prince of the dynasty, the middle-aged man from the heavenly sword hall said. The Chaos Territory, the real dragon dynasty. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they heard this. They were all speechless. There were countless territories in the Archean world. For example, the West Tiger region was a large region occupied by the human clan. Other than the human clan, there were only Archean ferocious beasts. There were no other races living there. There were pure human clan territories. Naturally, there were also pure foreign clan territories. Similarly, there were also mixed 100 clans territories. For example, the Great Chaos Territory was one of the largest and most chaotic territories among the mixed territories of the 100 races. Speaking of which, the area of the Great Chaos Territory was several times larger than the Western Tiger region. If one wanted to survive in it, one had to be extremely powerful. For example, the real Dragon Dynasty was the largest human clan force in the Chaos Territory. It led the other human clan forces in the Chaos Territory to fight against the other races and gain a foothold in the Chaos Territory. Simply put, the real Dragon Dynasty's foundation and strength were above any of the 5 major forces in the West Tiger region. Chapter 962. The Heavenly Fortune Platform belonged to the West Tiger Territory. Theoretically, it should also be a place where swordsmen from the West Tiger Territory could enter to comprehend. Long Zun came from the Chaotic Territory. One could imagine that he must have obtained the secret Order of Fortune from someone else. However, The Heavenly Sword Hall's motto was that only the capable could obtain the Secret Order of Fortune. The Secret Order of Fortune belonged to anyone who could obtain it, except for the foreign races and evil path swordsmen. Therefore, no matter how shocked the people of the West Tiger Territory were, no matter how uncomfortable they felt, no matter how disgusted they felt, they could only endure it. After all, Long Zun was still a human. He was the crown prince of the real dragon dynasty who was fighting against the foreign races. Whether it was in terms of status or talent, it was natural for him to have a secret order of fortune and enter the heavenly fortune platform. As long as Long Zun did not die prematurely, he was destined to be valued by the Heavenly Sword Hall and become one of the pillars of the human race in the future. But then again, Long Zun was indeed very capable to have come from the chaotic territory to the West Tiger Territory. The real Dragon Dynasty was indeed very powerful. Long Zun's early 9th transformation Sword Intent was enough to become a thorn in the flesh of the foreign races. However, he was still alive and had come to the West Tiger Territory. This was enough to show that his strength was extraordinary. It also showed that the real Dragon Dynasty was powerful enough to protect Long Zun's safety. Chu Mu and the others rushed onto the Heavenly Fortune platform's stairs like moths to a flame. They immediately felt a strong pressure pressing down on them from all directions. Suddenly, their bodies trembled and their legs sank. Those who were unprepared almost squatted down. They burst out with power to resist the pressure. Their bodies straightened and their eyes shone with sharp light. Strong sword intent gushed out. Its sharpness soared into the sky and stirred up the wind and clouds. It was at least the late 8th transformation sword intent. Most of them were at the peak of the 8th transformation sword intent. They were like invisible divine swords that displayed shocking sharpness. If an alien race expert were to launch a sneak attack at this moment and kill all 100 people who had entered the heavenly creation platform, the human race's super geniuses in the West Tiger Territory would be wiped out, resulting in a shortage of manpower. Fortunately, the heavenly creation platform was powerful. Even a sword saint's full-powered attack could not harm it at all, so it was impossible for it to affect the people on the heavenly creation platform. Moreover, if one looked carefully in the sky, one could vaguely see the battleships of the Sword God Hall circling and patrolling. Once they found a target, they would immediately launch a devastating attack without mercy. With such tight security, the miraculous divine creation platform, and the presence of sword saints from many major powers, no foreign race would be willing to pay a huge price to assassinate them. He quickly adjusted his strength, and while resisting the sudden pressure from the rooftop, he sped up. 333 steps might not sound like a lot, but under the heavy pressure, one's speed was greatly reduced. It was impossible to reach the top in a short period of time. Chu Mu also discovered that every time he rushed up a flight of stairs, the pressure he faced would become stronger. Under this constantly increasing pressure, the swordsmen could only adjust their strength time and time again. If it was too small, it would be difficult to resist the pressure. If it was too big, it would cause them to lose their balance and make a fool of themselves. Under these circumstances, the gap between everyone began to show bit by bit. Without a doubt, Long Zun was far in the lead. He was a full 10 steps ahead of the second place. At this moment, Chu Mu was in the middle of the pack. His brain was constantly working, calculating the increase in the pressure of each step, calculating the strength he used, the balance, and so on. He planned to unleash a burst of strength. As for Tsang Mo and the 4 most outstanding people from the other 4 major powers, they mustered all their strength and continuously charged forward. Their goal was to catch up to Long Zun, or even surpass him. However, they could only see Long Zun's back. He was 10 steps away, but no matter how they chased, they could not catch up. They could not even close the gap. It seemed that the gap was constantly being pulled apart. Since they could not catch up to Long Zun, Tsang Mo and the other 4 temporarily gave up on this idea. They focused on fighting for second place. What was the benefit of being second? There did not seem to be any benefit. However, none of them would think too much about it. They would think about it after getting second place. Actually, this was a battle for glory. It was related to themselves, and also vaguely related to the powers behind them. Swords were sharp. Those who practiced the sword would have their own sharpness. However, some people kept their sharpness inside, while others let it out. They all had different forms. Some swordsmen would show their sharpness everywhere. Some swordsmen would usually keep their sharpness inside, only unleashing it at the crucial moment. Striving for the top, pressing forward with indomitable will, competing with others. This was the characteristic of swordsmen. From the moment they held a sword, they were destined to be like this. It had little to do with whether they saw through fame and fortune. In reality, in the world of swordsmen, fame and fortune were only a very small part of fighting for first place. What was truly important was fighting for pride, for a breath of sharpness. Longzhuan was like this, Song Mo and the other four were like this, and so were the other swordsmen. All of them wanted to fight for a better ranking, to get ahead of the others. Many swordsmen like Chu Mu, who had remained in the middle or even lower ranks at the beginning, began to exert their strength after silently calculating and feeling that they could surpass the others. Below the heavenly creation platform, the elders of the 5 major powers and the people of the other powers all stared with wide eyes. Some of them even unconsciously clenched their fists, muttering inwardly about how no one could surpass Longzhuan. Even if they could not surpass him, it would be good to catch up to him. Although the Great Chaos Territory was much larger than the West Tiger Territory, no one was willing to be suppressed by the people of the other territories. However, the early 9th Revolution's sword intent that Longzhuan had displayed had firmly suppressed the geniuses of the West Tiger Territory. He was currently far in the lead, further suppressing the geniuses of the West Tiger Territory. There was no hope of catching up to him. Suddenly, Song Mo and the other 4 seemed to have accumulated enough strength. They erupted with a loud bang, shooting off the stairs like arrows from a bow. They shot up and rapidly closed the gap between them and Longzhuan. Blue veins bulged on each of their foreheads. It was obvious that they had used all their strength. Catch up! Catch up! Countless people below the heavenly creation platform were shouting. Even if they were not from the 5 major powers, they had a common enemy. Chu Mu, we had some misunderstandings before. I also paid a price. Li Tao suddenly caught up to Chu Mu and transmitted his voice to Chu Mu. Since we are all fortune disciples now, why don't we let go of the small grudge between us? What do you think? He knew Chu Mu's name because he had heard it before. Although Li Tao had said that he would let go of the grudge between them, his tone was not sincere at all. It even sounded a little forced. Chu Mu could completely imagine that Li Tao had said those words because he had been warned. The Li family's strength was far from comparable to the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Perhaps the Li family was afraid of the Flying Heaven Pavilion's retaliation, which was why they had forced Li Tao to say those words. However, Li Tao was not sincere at all. Ignoring Li Tao, Chu Mu concentrated on his calculations. Song Mo's group of 5 flew up the stairs, closing in on Longzhuan. You want to compete with me, Longzhuan? Watch me trample all the West Tiger Territory's geniuses under my feet. Longzhuan suddenly bellowed. His voice was extremely domineering, giving people a feeling of insufferably arrogance. Following his words, an incomparably tyrannical aura burst out from his body, as if a monarch was descending to the world. The tyrannical airflow rushed out in all directions, causing Song Mo's group of 5 to pause for a moment. With a boom, Longzhuan's body rushed forward. His terrifying speed caused his body to draw out a dragon-shaped force. Accompanied by a series of resounding sounds, he pulled away from Song Mo's group of 5 in an instant, still more than 10 steps away. With one burst, Song Mo's group of 5's speed suddenly dropped. They could only barely maintain their second position, and no longer had the strength to burst out a second time. Staring at the tyrannical back that was still 10 steps away, a trace of unwillingness flashed in their eyes. They gritted their teeth and chased after him, unwilling to admit defeat. Longzuan had already passed 250 steps out of the 330 step. He was only 80 steps away from reaching the top. Chu-Mu, don't be so shameless. Otherwise, I'll spread the news that you have a treasure that can amplify your sword intent by a whole level. Li Tao felt that he had already given Chu-Mu a lot of face by humbling himself and asking for peace. Now that he saw Chu-Mu ignoring him and treating him coldly, the anger in his heart was immediately aroused. He sent another voice transmission to threaten him. Suddenly, Chu-Mu's eyes shone with a sharp light. A sharp light gushed out from his body. He had already finished calculating. The increase in weight of each step, the increase in strength, and the maximum speed to maintain balance, and so on all appeared in his mind. It was very clear, without any error. Stepping forward, Chu-Mu's speed suddenly increased. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. It was as if the pressure on the rooftop no longer existed. In the blink of an eye, he surpassed one person after another, closing in on Song Mo's group of 5. Chu-Mu is going all out. The pavilion elder of the Flying Heaven Pavilion was stunned. He hurriedly opened his eyes wide and stared carefully to make sure that he was not mistaken. In an instant, many people's gazes fell on Chu-Mu, following his movements. Song Mo's group of 5 was struggling to catch up. Out of the corner of their eyes, they saw a figure flash by quickly. After Longzuan's back, another figure appeared, quickly moving further away, quickly closing in on Longzuan's back. 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step. With another step, Chu-Mu was already at the same level as Longzuan. Countless people's hearts clenched. In the blink of an eye, Chu-Mu had caught up and was about to be overtaken. Longzuan erupted again. With a resounding dragon roar, he once again surpassed Chu-Mu. However, in an instant, Chu-Mu caught up and overtook him. Then, Longzuan caught up with Chu-Mu and surpassed Chu-Mu once again. Chapter 963. On the heavenly creation platform, 2 figures were chasing after each other. At that moment, they had already passed the 300th step and were about 30 steps away from the top. Everybody's eyes were fixated on the 2 silhouettes who were fighting against each other. Their hearts were beating faster and faster, they were almost suffocating. The other 98 people who were ignored slowed down. Their eyes were wide open as they stared at the 2 figures in front of them in disbelief. Especially Li Tao, whose face was filled with disbelief. He had never thought that the person he had just threatened would be able to compete with Longzuan. Longzuan was also shocked. He had never thought that there would be someone who could compete with him in the West Tiger Great region. Although it wasn't his true strength, it was enough to make him pay attention. Eruption, eruption, eruption. The 2 of them were competing to be the first to reach the top. Erupting with the peak 9th revolution sword intent? Of course, he could leave Longzuan behind, but Chu-Mu wasn't willing to do so. There were many reasons. It was his trump card, and it was also a way to train himself. Neither of them spoke. 10 steps, the top of the fortune platform was right in front of them. 9 steps, 8 steps, at the 5th step, Longzuan erupted again. With a boom, he was 2 steps ahead of Chu-Mu. He took another step and was only 2 steps away from the top. Chu-Mu also erupted in an instant, using the mountain quaking force to catch up and overtake him. At the last step, everyone held their breaths. Even the 98 swordsmen on the fortune platform's stairs stopped in their track. Charge! Chu-Mu and Longzuan erupted for the last time. A moment was like eternity. The 2 figures rushed to the top of the fortune platform at the same time. Their feet seemed to have landed on the top of the fortune platform at the same time. Below, the crowd breathed a sigh of relief. They were overjoyed and excited. Finally, there was someone who could compete with Longzuan. What's your name? At the top of Tiantai, Longzuan and Chu-Mu were standing side by side. Longzuan turned around and looked at Chu-Mu. His domineering chi fell on Chu Mu's body as he asked in a domineering tone. Chu Mu. Chu Mu's reply did not carry the slightest trace of anger. It was as light as the clouds and light as the wind, dissolving Long Zun's domineering aura into nothing. Chu Mu, the number one disciple is mine, said the revered dragon, his figure fading away. Let's wait and see, Chu Mu replied as his figure faded rapidly under the power of the creation secret order. The moment the two of them disappeared, Song Mo and the other four also rushed to the top of the rooftop. Then, their figures began to fade and they disappeared. It was a miraculous experience. It was like traveling through space and time. In just a blink of an eye, Chu Mu's understanding and control of space power deepened. The creation's secret order disappeared and Chu Mu appeared in a dreamlike place. There were countless bubbles floating around. Some were big and some were small, and each bubble had a different color. Some were transparent red, some were transparent blue, some were transparent gold, and some were transparent mixed colors. They were all different. Countless bubbles floated around, making Chu Mu, Long Zun, and the others feel as if they were in a dreamlike world. They were intoxicated for a moment. The strong willpower woke Chu Mu and the others up quickly. They were shocked to find that they could not release their spiritual force in this place. They could only look with their eyes. They quickly scanned the surroundings and found a lotus platform not far away. It was big enough for a person to sit on. Chu Mu waved his arms and quickly swam toward the lotus platform as if he was swimming in water. Soon, he swam to the side of the lotus platform. He grabbed the edge of the lotus platform with both hands and with a little force, he landed on the lotus platform. The lotus platform seemed to have a suction force that pulled Chu Mu down. He adjusted his posture and sat down cross-legged. At the same time, Long Zun also sat on a lotus platform. As for Song Mo and the others, they had just seen one. The moment Xiao Chen sat on the lotus platform, he felt a strange feeling. It was hard to describe with words. Following that, a majestic voice seemed to come from the distant void, passing through layers of space and time. It echoed in Chu Mu's mind. Creation, it was just two words, but they left an endless echo in his mind. They echoed in the depths of his soul, causing his soul to throb and his blood to boil. The two words and the majestic voice caused Chu Mu's soul to tremble. He entered a miraculous state. The bubbles in front of him floated around and started to change. A bubble the size of a human head floated in front of Chu Mu and stopped. The color of the bubble changed from a transparent gold to a transparent green, then to a transparent blue, then to a transparent red, and finally to a transparent yellow-brown. Change, change, change. Each change represented something. Each change contained a profound mystery. Each change contained the power of creation. Outside, the swordsmen reached the top of the creation platform one by one. Then, under the power of the creation's secret order, they started fading away. They started entering that mysterious and dreamy world. When they first entered, many people were not used to it. They looked left and right, and after a while, they started looking for a lotus platform. As more and more people entered, people started fighting over the lotus platforms. Although there were enough lotus platforms here, the problem was that some lotus platforms were closer to each other and some lotus platforms were farther away. Everyone naturally wanted to fight for the ones closer to each other. But there were only a few that were close to each other. Most people who couldn't find a lotus platform could only set their sights on the lotus platforms that were farther away. Finally, the 100 swordsmen all found a lotus platform. They rapidly approached and sat down. A majestic voice that seemed to pierce through endless space and time echoed in their minds as they entered a mystical state of enlightenment. Everyone's comprehension was different. They've all gone in. An elder looked at the empty creation platform and let out a sigh of relief. Everyone that enters the creation mystic realm is able to perceive the mysteries of creation. I wonder who will become the number one follower on the creation heavenly tablet this time? Although I don't want to admit it, The number 1 follower position is likely to be taken by the Dragon Sovereign. An elder from the Sky Splitter Sword sect sighed. That might not be the case. Just now, there was someone who reached the top with the Dragon Sovereign. Who knows, he might become the number 1 follower. An elder from the Extreme Black Palace retorted. That junior just now was a disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion, right? A middle-aged man from Heavenly Sword Hall suddenly asked. He looked at the pavilion elders from the Flying Heaven Pavilion. He is a disciple of our pavilion. A pavilion elder replied. There was a hint of pride in his voice. This was also true. No matter which influence had such a talented disciple, they would feel proud from the bottom of their heart. What is his name? The middle-aged man from Heavenly Sword Hall asked again. Chumu. The pavilion elder replied. Chumu. The middle-aged man from Heavenly Sword Hall repeated. Chumu? This name sounds familiar to me. The elder from the Extreme Black Palace who spoke before suddenly said. He had a thoughtful expression on his face, and then a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. I remember now. Not long ago, I heard that in the new batch of disciples recruited by the Flying Heaven Pavilion, there was someone who broke the record set by Qin Tianyi. Moreover, that person comprehended 8 profound meanings and tempered all of them to the peak of the 8th revolution. It can be said that this person is an amazing talent. Unfortunately, this person's cultivation talent is unbelievably low. He is only at the low 5th grade. This new disciple's name seems to be Chu Mu. The elder from the Extreme Black Palace spoke with a strange tone. Cultivation talent can be increased through the use of rare treasures. The pavilion elder from the Flying Heaven Pavilion retorted. That's right. However, even if his cultivation talent is increased to the 4th grade, so what? In the end, he will only be able to reach the King Realm. The elder from the Extreme Black Palace continued to speak with a strange smile. For many swordsmen, the King Realm is their life goal. However, you and I both know that the King Realm is just the beginning. It is impossible to reach the immemorial age. Or do you think that rare treasures that can increase one's cultivation talent are so easy to obtain? The pavilion elder from the Flying Heaven Pavilion immediately fell silent. He didn't refute the elder from the Extreme Black Palace, because the elder from the Extreme Black Palace wasn't speaking without evidence. It was very difficult to increase one's cultivation talent. Perhaps the Flying Heaven Pavilion could increase Chu Mu's cultivation talent from the 5th grade to the 4th grade, but to increase it from the 4th grade to the 3rd grade was even more difficult. Even if it could be done, who knew how many years it would take? Increasing it to the 4th grade meant that Chu Mu would only be able to reach the manifestation realm and become the Sword of Gojoseon. In the eyes of many swordsmen, the Sword of Gojoseon was very powerful. It was the goal that they would spend their entire lives chasing after. However, for the entire immemorial age, the King Realm was just a small matter. To truly become the pillar of a race, one had to become a saint-level expert. Moreover, one had to be an extremely outstanding saint-level expert in order to have enough influence. Even if one didn't become the pillar of a race, one had to at least become a saint-level expert in order to shine on the immemorial age. Otherwise, those below the saint level would always be outside the center of the immemorial age. To become a saint-level expert, one had to have a cultivation talent of the 2nd grade. How many grades did one have to go from the 5th grade to the 2nd grade? Even the Heavenly Sword Hall couldn't do it. To be honest, the Flying Heaven Pavilion shouldn't have used such a precious good fortune token on Chu Mu, the elder from the Extreme Black Palace concluded. The Flying Heaven Pavilion doesn't need the Extreme Black Palace to worry about it. The pavilion elder from the Flying Heaven Pavilion immediately retorted. The elder from the Extreme Black Palace only smiled coldly and didn't refute. The middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall revealed an interested expression. Breaking the record of the Flying Heaven Pavilion's entrance examination means that this person's comprehension is extremely high. He comprehended 8 profound meanings and refined them all to the limit of the 8th revolution. This means that his soul is innately powerful. Why is his cultivation talent so low? The middle-aged man couldn't help but ponder. Chapter 964. The creation's secret realm was dreamy and mysterious. The bubble in front of Chu Mu eventually turned transparent silver. It was the color of the profound meaning of space. Chu Mu had comprehended 10 profound meanings, and the bubble in front of him had also changed 10 colors, finally settling on the transparent silver color. Every time it changed, Chu Mu's understanding of the profound meaning deepened a little. In the creation's secret realm, in this state, the effect of comprehending was dozens of times better than outside. However, this was not the main point of comprehending. The main point was creation. What was creation? Creation and evolution, the mysteries and mysteries of the universe and nature. It existed between heaven and earth, in the great Tao and in all things. It was everywhere, all the time, and yet it seemed to have never existed. Creation was a kind of power and also a kind of realm. The bubble in front of Chu Mu changed again. A smear of black appeared from the center of the bubble and quickly spread out. It filled the entire bubble at a speed visible to the naked eye, causing the bubble to become pure black. This was not a change of the profound meaning of darkness, because Chu Mu had not comprehended the profound meaning of darkness. In front of Chu Mu, the bubble seemed to have become a universe, the most primitive universe embryo that had yet to take shape. Chu Mu's gaze was focused on the pure black bubble. His entire being seemed to be in a dark chaos. He couldn't feel any energy fluctuations, nor could he feel the passage of time. Silence, incomparable silence. The silence was enough to make one go crazy. He did not know how long had passed. It was as if everything was still, and everything was eternal. Is this the chaos before heaven and earth were created? A voice, like a whisper, sounded from the bottom of his heart, echoing in the dark chaos. A sliver of bewilderment grew in his heart. It was like wild grass in spring, causing Chu Mu to feel at a loss. Like Chu Mu, Long Zun and the other swordsmen were also at a loss. They did not know what was going on. Time passed little by little in the outside world. Last time, when the creation platform opened, it took Qianshan Wudao 2 hours and a quarter of an hour to comprehend the mysteries of creation. He left the creation's secret territory and became the first disciple on the sky steel. I wonder if anyone can break that record this time? Wudao's perception is outstanding. The possibility of breaking his record is not high. An elder of the sky-splitting sword sect immediately said. Thousand Mountains was a disciple of the Sky Slicer Sword sect. Naturally, he had to protect him. That's hard to say. The Flying Heaven Pavilion's new disciple, Chu Mu, broke the record set by Qin Tianyi during the entrance examination. The Flying Heaven Pavilion values comprehension the most. The elder of the Black Extreme Palace interjected. Perhaps this time, Chu Mu will be able to break Qianshan Wudao's record. Furthermore, there's still Long Zun. The elder of the Flying Heaven Pavilion glanced at the elder of the Black Extreme Palace, but did not say anything. Among the 5 major forces, the Black Extreme Palace was one of the more unrestrained sections. They were more unscrupulous and had a demonic style. Therefore, they were not very popular. The elder of the Sky Slicer Sword sect also knew that the elder of the Black Extreme Palace was annoying. He knew that the elder's words were meant to provoke a small conflict between the Sky Slicer Sword sect and the Flying Heaven Pavilion. He would not fall for it. No one paid any attention to him. The elder of the Black Extreme Palace only chuckled and did not say anything. Creation, creation. What is creation? Traces of doubt appeared in Chu Mu's mind. They lingered in his heart for a long time. What was creation? On the surface, it was the profoundness and mysteries of the universe, the evolution of creation, a kind of power, a kind of realm. However, this was only an expression of words and not true comprehension. True comprehension was something that could only be sensed and not expressed in word. Immersed in comprehension, he sorted out his thoughts. Slowly and painstakingly, his powerful perception came into play. The confusion was like silk, slowly being pulled away. True knowledge gradually revealed itself, appearing in Chu Mu's soul. The feeling of being able to see the clear sky after the clouds parted was wonderful. It was as if a person walking in endless darkness had finally seen a ray of light in front of them. It was as if a person who had bitterly searched for the truth had finally found it after countless trials and tribulations. The feeling of suddenly being enlightened was incomparably wonderful and indescribable. The beautiful scenery behind the dense fog was presented before his eyes. Creation, creation, creation. In an instant, everything became clear. Sword, come! With a low shout, Chu Mu raised his right hand within the chaotic darkness and grasped at the void. Suddenly, there was a cracking sound. A white thunderbolt seemed to come from beyond the heavens and came crashing down, tearing apart the darkness. The white thunderbolt struck Chu Mu's raised right palm. In his hand, it stretched and condensed into a sword light. In the end, it took the form of a white sword of light. As it pulsed, countless arcs of lightning leaped about. With the sword in hand, an endless sharpness emanated from Chu Mu's body. It swept out in all directions and shook the dark chaos. This sword was a sword condensed from the thunder of creation. It was a sword of creation, a sword of creation. Open! A loud shout rang out. It was like the first voice of the world. He raised the sword and slashed down with all his strength. This was the first sword, a sword that could split apart the heavens and earth. The white sword slashed down. At this moment, Chu Mu transformed into the ancestor of creation. He broke through the initial dark chaos and brought the first ray of light to the universe embryo. Cracking sounds rang out. It was like the sound of eggshells being smashed. The white sword light slashed down and turned into an incomparably sharp thunderbolt. It instantly swept through the dark chaos. This was the sword light of creation. It was the sword light that brought the first ray of light to the universe embryo. Chu Mu only felt that the dark chaos he was in began to tremble. It was as if the heavens and earth were about to shatter and be destroyed. However, he didn't panic at all because he had already comprehended a trace of the essence of creation. He knew that the current trembling was a kind of change that would help him deepen his comprehension until he comprehended the essence of creation. He swung his sword again. It wasn't a messy swing, nor was it an aimless swing. It was as if there was a voice in the unseen world telling Chu Mu to draw his sword and how to draw his sword. A void sword technique was immediately unfolded in Chu Mu's hands. From the time he comprehended the void sword technique until now, Chu Mu had only mastered the fifth move. He hadn't completely mastered the sixth move yet. However, at this moment, he performed move after move. From the first move to the fifth move, his understanding and application of the profound meaning of space improved. The sixth move was perfectly deduced. With every move, a white sword light would appear. It would either pierce or slash, sweeping in all directions. In the dark chaos, it would leave behind a white light that wouldn't disappear and break through the darkness. The void sword technique was a perfect deduction of the sword of creation. There was a huge leap between the sixth move and the seventh move. It was very difficult. Chu Mu suddenly stopped swinging his sword. He stood in the dark chaos with his sword in hand. Around him, there were 7 white sword lights at different angles. They seemed to exist forever. He was in a state of enlightenment. There were 6 white sword lights flickering in his eyes. They were the first 6 moves of the void sword technique. Every move had a unique comprehension. The 6 comprehensions were related to each other. They evolved and overlapped in Chu Mu's mind before finally exploding out. Chu Mu's hand moved again. The sword of creation in his hand also moved. A sword light slashed across. The 7th move of the void sword technique was skillfully executed. The white sword light shot out, cutting through the dark chaos and breaking through half of it. With this move, the understanding of the profound meaning of space in his mind exploded. In an instant, Chu Mu's comprehension ability exploded, and he entered an unprecedented state of comprehension. Circulating at high speeds, the sword in his hand only paused for a moment before waving it again. An even more profound and powerful sword move was used. The eighth move of the Void Sword technique. The eighth move was executed without any hindrance. The understanding of the profound meaning of space in his mind deepened by another small level. After the sword paused for 3 breaths, the ninth move of the Void Sword technique was executed by Chu Mu. The ninth move was the last move. It was also the most profound and powerful move. When Chu Mu executed it, it wasn't as smooth as when he executed the eighth move. It was a little sluggish, but in the end, he was still able to execute it completely. However, the sword light of the ninth move was a little unstable. After it was executed, it flickered for 3 breaths before dissipating into the dark chaos. Then, one after another, the sword light faded and dissipated. The white sword light disappeared, and everything returned to the dark chaos. It could be said that he had failed in his first attempt to open up the dark chaos. Failure was equivalent to failing to comprehend the profound meaning of creation. However, to Chu Mu, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He wasn't dispirited at all. His heart was calm and unperturbed. He held the sword of creation in his hand, as if he had become one with the dark chaos. Gradually, traces of darkness permeated and shrouded Chu Mu's body. It was like countless vines were spreading and trying to devour Chu Mu. Even the sword of creation in his hand was being devoured by the darkness bit by bit. The white light on it was getting weaker and weaker. In the end, Chu Mu disappeared. Only the sword that was emitting a dim white light was left. It seemed to be making its final struggle, but it couldn't escape the fate of being devoured by the dark chaos. Disappeared. Chu Mu's figure had disappeared. The sword of creation that was emitting a white light in his hand had also disappeared. It had been devoured and assimilated by the dark chaos. It had turned into darkness and chaos. If anyone saw this, they would definitely be shocked and disappointed. This was because it meant that the comprehension of creation was about to fail. In history, when the heavenly platform of creation opened, not every swordsman who entered to comprehend the profound meaning of creation had succeeded. There were still some examples of failure. There was a price to pay for failure. It would be 30% more difficult to comprehend the profound meaning of creation in the future. 30% was a fatal increase in difficulty. In many cases, it was enough to become a natural moat that even the most talented swordsman couldn't break through or advance. Now, Chu Mu was in a predicament. It was a predicament that he had never imagined. Chapter 965. When Chu Mu comprehended how to open up the darkness and chaos and comprehend the mysteries of creation, the others were still in a daze, fumbling around. Even Long Zun was only slightly faster than the other 98 swordsmen, not as good as Chu Mu. But at this time, Chu Mu was assimilated by the darkness and chaos, while Long Zun had already comprehended and started to open up the darkness and chaos. In fact, this was also Chu Mu's own choice. Originally, he could open up the darkness and chaos faster, comprehend the essence of creation, leave the creation's secret realm, walk down the creation heavenly platform, and become the first disciple on the divine steel. But he chose to use the Void Sword technique to open up the darkness and chaos. At that time, his Void Sword technique had only been cultivated to the 6th move, and he had not completely grasped it. In the outside world, if he wanted to truly grasp the entire Void Sword technique, he would need at least 1 or 2 years. Even if he was only proficient in it, it would take at least a year. This was under the condition that Chu Mu often cultivated it. If some accident caused him to be unable to continue cultivating, it would take even longer. But in the creation's secret realm, the efficiency of comprehension was increased by tens or even hundreds of times. This was an excellent opportunity, and Chu Mu would definitely not let it go. Using the Void Sword technique to open up the darkness and chaos was not only due to the guidance of creation, but also due to the choice in his heart and subconscious mind. In other words, Long Zun and the others were only comprehending the mysteries of creation, but Chu Mu was also comprehending Wukong's sword technique in addition to comprehending the mysteries of creation. The difficulty suddenly increased by many times. In the darkness and chaos, Chu Mu's figure could not be seen, but he truly existed. In his mind, the 9 moves of the Void Sword technique were performed one by one, becoming increasingly proficient and close to perfection. Every move had a deeper understanding of the mysteries of space, and its level increased. When it reached the 9th move, it became smoother and more proficient, and there were fewer and fewer flaws. In the spiritual world, the speed of the sword-wielding phantom continued to increase, and it became harder to see the sword blade. There was only a blurry sword light, and it gradually disappeared because the speed of the sword was even faster. Suddenly, the speed of the sword reached its peak and stopped. It was fixed in the posture of the 9th move. After pausing for a few breaths, he slowly withdrew his sword. "I understand." A very faint yet extremely firm voice suddenly resounded. In an instant, it turned into a surging sound wave that struck the darkness and chaos, and it reverberated endlessly. In an instant, an indescribably dazzling white sword light suddenly pierced through the darkness and shot out. In the center of the darkness and chaos, a patch of darkness faded away, and Chu Mu's figure reappeared. The sword light flashed, and the first move of the Void Sword technique was performed. Second move, third move, fourth move, fifth move, sixth move, seventh move, eighth move, ninth move, a total of 9 stances were executed perfectly by Chu Mu. The speed of his sword light was extremely fast, linking up with each other. In an instant, beams of white sword light shot out, traversing the darkness and chaos, as though they were eternal. Chu Mu's sword did not stop. He continued from the first stance until the 9th stance, and then he continued from the first stance. He performed it over and over again. Beams of white sword light shot out, traversing the darkness and chaos, gradually increasing in number. Finally, they densely covered the darkness and chaos, filling the entire darkness and chaos. It was as if they were emitted with Chu Mu as the center, causing Chu Mu to become like a sun. In his mind, in the depths of his soul, his understanding of the profound of emptiness had reached a pinnacle. It was the true pinnacle. If he made another breakthrough, he would completely grasp the profound of emptiness. Open. The final stance, the perfect 9th stance of the Void Sword technique, was executed by Chu Mu. The white sword light that traversed the darkness and chaos hit the intersection point of all the white sword light. In an instant, it was as if the heavens and earth had collapsed, and the universe had exploded. At this moment, no words could describe the shock in Chu Mu's heart. This was a scene of the creation of the heavens and earth. It was difficult to observe in other places, but at this moment it was so clear, so close, and so immersive. The endless darkness and chaos shattered. It was as if there was an indescribable force attacking from the inside and outside, causing the darkness and chaos to break apart. Countless white sword light exploded. That was the sword light of fortune, shining with the aura of life. Countless cracks spread out in the darkness and chaos. They were white. Subsequently, expanse after expanse of darkness and chaos shattered, were obliterated, and vanished without a trace. Looking at this scene, the shock in Chu Mu's heart was indescribable. In his mind, his understanding of the profound of emptiness seemed to be on the verge of breaking through the limit of the 9th stance of the Void Sword technique, reaching a deeper level. The darkness and chaos shattered one after another, revealing a white void. It was then filled with a gray aura, becoming a true space. Inch by inch, piece by piece, it connected and gradually took shape. As for Chu Mu, he could clearly and vividly feel the beginning of the heavens and earth, the beginning of space. His understanding of the power of emptiness was constantly rising, reaching the limit and reaching the limit. The chaos broke apart, the universe opened, the clear aura rose, forming the heavens, the turbid aura sank, forming the earth. The heavens and earth corresponded, forming a world. Yin and yang, the five elements, wind, thunder, rain, lightning, time, space, and all kinds of things began to be deduced. At this time, Chu Mu's multitasking was no longer useful. Because there were too many mysteries. If he had to multitask to comprehend them, his brain wouldn't be able to bear the burden of comprehending them, causing his soul to be injured. Therefore, Chu Mu only focused on comprehending the mysteries of creation and space. He had a feeling that he could succeed. At the same time as he comprehended the mysteries of space, a mysterious feeling filled his heart. Although it was very weak, it was a very mysterious power. It was not inferior to the power of space. In fact, it was even superior to the power of space. It was the power of time. For the first time, the power of time left a mark on Chu Mu's soul. Scene after scene flashed before Chu Mu's eyes. The comprehensions in his mind were constantly accumulating. Finally, he reached his limit. With a loud boom, it was as if a lightning of creation had struck down, landing in the depths of Chu Mu's mind. The accumulated comprehensions exploded, filling his mind. He felt as if his soul was about to explode and soar into the sky. A brand new understanding appeared in the midst of the explosion and quickly spread out, filling his entire mind. With a stroke of inspiration, Chu Mu swung the sword of creation in his hand once again. What kind of sword was this? It was incomparably stunning and dazzling. It was as if nothing in the world could compare to it. This was the essence of the sword. It was the fusion of the essence of the 9 moves of the void sword art. This sword, just this sword, contained the profoundness of the mysteries of emptiness, surpassing the combination of the 9 moves of the void sword art. It was an upgrade, a sublimation. As the sword was swung, the small world that was slowly taking shape accelerated in an instant. The wind and clouds changed, heaven and earth changed, and it quickly became complete. The mysteries of creation appeared in Chu Mu's mind, intertwining and making Chu Mu constantly deepen his comprehension. The creation realm was right in front of him. His understanding of the profoundness of emptiness had reached an extremely profound level, surpassing the level of the void sword art. That sword was the sublimation of the fusion of the 9 move. In terms of power alone, it was more powerful than most of the 3rd grade of the earth-piercing sword art. The power of this sword art was comparable to the 3rd grade of the earth-piercing sword art of the earth-piercing sword art. It was enough to show how exquisite and powerful the sword art was. Since I've comprehended it, I'll go out. With this thought, Chu Mu was about to leave when he was suddenly attracted by the subtle changes in the new world. His gaze froze. What was that? The world spun, the mountains moved, the rivers flowed, the sun and the moon alternated, the cycle changed, and the world changed. But what should exist still existed. The mountains were still mountains, the water was still water, and the life force was still life force. It had existed since ancient times, undecayed and immortal, indestructible. Even Chu Mu himself didn't hear his own whisper, as if it was unconsciously. At that moment, he understood something, the essence of indestructible. The indestructible sword intent contained in the indestructible sword was also consumed by Chu Mu time and time again. In the end, the indestructible sword also shattered, making Chu Mu unable to comprehend it anymore. His comprehension of the indestructible sword intent was only at an extremely shallow level. It couldn't be helped. His comprehension was strong, but it was extremely difficult to comprehend attribute sword intents, especially those high-level attribute sword intents. The difficulty of comprehending them was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than ordinary attribute sword intents. At this moment, Chu Mu never thought that the scene he saw would allow him to comprehend the essence of indestructible. The throbbing in that moment was more than what he had gained from comprehending the indestructible sword in the past. The indestructible sword intent directly entered the door. In other words, Chu Mu had already reached the entry level in comprehending the indestructible sword intent. Standing in the new world, the changes of this new world had not stopped. Looking at the changes of the world, his comprehension of the indestructible sword intent gradually deepened. Indestructible, indestructible. Even if the world changed, the sun and the moon alternated, the rivers flowed, and the mountains collapsed, there would always be something that wouldn't decay, and that was indestructible. In an instant, it suddenly became clear and enlightened again. Traces of indestructible aura were born in Chu Mu's spiritual world, spreading towards one of Chu Mu's two great sword souls. It spread to the sword soul, wrapping around the sword soul, and fusing into the sword soul bit by bit. It began to transform the sword soul bit by bit, causing the sword soul to change into an attribute sword soul, the indestructible sword soul. If there was enough indestructible aura, the entire sword soul could be completely transformed into the indestructible sword soul. However, Chu Mu had only comprehended the entry level of the indestructible sword soul, and hadn't completely penetrated it. Therefore, there wasn't enough indestructible aura, and he could only change a part of it. But compared to before, this kind of improvement was 10 times or even dozens of times more. Chu Mu didn't move at all as the transformation was carried out. On the other hand, Long Zun stepped out of the new world and glanced at the world where Chu Mu was not far away. He revealed a faint smile, and his figure faded as he left the fortune's secret realm. Chapter 966. Although the inextinguishable qi in his spiritual world was weak, it was extremely tough and powerful. It slowly merged with the sword soul and constantly changed the sword soul, which required a process and time. Looking at the bubble Chu Mu was in and the motionless Chu Mu sitting on the lotus platform, a domineering smile hung on the corner of the dragon sovereign's mouth. Its figure quickly faded until it disappeared. On the creation platform, a spatial ripple appeared and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone stared at the ripple with wide eyes. Someone's coming out. Who could it be? Who could be the first disciple? Whispers and all kinds of guesses appeared in everyone's mind. A silhouette appeared, gradually becoming clearer. The speed was very fast, but everyone still felt as if a year had passed. That's a purple robe. It's a purple-gold dragon robe. Long Zun of the real dragon dynasty. Exclamations sounded one after another. There was an unconcealable disappointment in their voices, but there was also a relief that said, I knew this would happen. Indeed, when Long Zun displayed the early-stage 9th Revolution sword intent, he had already left a deep impression in everyone's hearts. He was a peerless genius. The first person to leave the creation's secret realm was him. He indeed fit the description in everyone's hearts. Standing alone on the heavenly fortune platform, Long Zun looked around disdainfully, as if he was a king. At this moment, Long Zun felt like he was the ruler of the earth, the ruler of all life. As the crown prince of the true dragon dynasty, he was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. His bloodline was extraordinary, and his talent was peerless. Since he was a child, he had a majestic aura in his bones. As he grew older, his cultivation base improved, and his seniors educated him, so his arrogance and domineering aura grew stronger. At this moment, in this place, in this environment, it exploded. Long Zun felt his blood boiling, and it flowed twice as fast as usual. The true dragon sword origin in his body also accelerated, as if a true dragon was roaring in his meridians. The dragon sovereign couldn't help but raise his head and let out a long howl. That howl pierced through gold and cracked stone. It was like the roar of a dragon from the 9 heavens. It resounded through the clouds, as if it wanted to surpass the 9 heavens. A special power was stirring in his body and was about to break out. In his spiritual world, traces of a special power were about to appear. The dragon sovereign stopped howling as if he had run out of energy. The special aura in his spiritual world did not truly appear. It was at a level where it was about to appear but had yet to truly appear. The dragon sovereign could not help but sigh regretfully before returning to normal. At this stage, especially since he had already comprehended the mysteries of creation, if he spent some time diligently cultivating, studying, and comprehending, he would definitely be able to comprehend it. He would definitely be able to change his sword soul and transform his sword will into an elemental sword will. At that time, he would have truly mastered the sword principle that he had inherited. The essence of sword Tao lay in sword intent. Taking a step forward, Long Zun rushed down the stairs of the Heavenly Fortune platform. The Dragon Sovereign was the first to rush down the stairs of the Heavenly Fortune platform. Everyone's eyes began to focus on the Heavenly Fortune tablet. However, the names on the Heavenly Fortune tablet would only appear after everyone left the Heavenly Fortune realm. Even so, some discussions were inevitable. Tyrannical Thousand Mountains used 2 hours and a quarter of an hour. This Dragon Sovereign used less than 2 hours and a quarter of an hour. Doesn't that mean he broke Tyrannical Thousand Mountains' record? As expected, a monstrous genius with an early 9th revolution sword intent is amazing. It's normal for him to break a record. It looks like the number 1 disciple is the Dragon Sovereign. The Dragon Sovereign stood alone, standing tall and proud. The land around him seemed to be royal territory. He could hear everyone's discussions, which made his aura even more condensed and domineering. Number 1 disciple. The Dragon Sovereign muttered in a voice that only he could hear. Roughly 15 minutes later, another ripple appeared on the creation platform. 5 ripples appeared at almost the same time, and 5 figures appeared at almost the same time. They were people from the 5 great forces. It was Tsang Mo and the others. As soon as the 5 of them appeared, they first looked around. Their expressions seemed to be telling others that they felt that this was a novel experience. Everyone who comprehended the mysteries of Heavenly Fortune knew this. Why hasn't Chu Mu come out? The 3 pavilion elders of the Flying Heaven Pavilion frowned, puzzled. In the Flying Heaven Pavilion, Chu Mu had already displayed astonishing comprehension ability, which was comparable to Qin Tianyi's. Comprehension ability also played an important role in comprehending the mysteries of Heavenly Fortune. In theory, even if he wasn't the first to appear, he should at least be the second. Why hadn't he come out yet? The Dragon Sovereign also had an indescribable feeling. He seemed disappointed and puzzled. He originally thought that the person who could rush up the Heavenly Fortune platform with him would be the second to appear. Tsang Mo's group of 5 left the Fortune Heavenly platform. Not long after, more ripples appeared, one after another, and one after another, figures appeared. 20 people had already appeared, but Chu Mu still hadn't appeared. The elder of the Black Extreme Palace revealed a puzzled expression and said, "Strange, Chu Mu doesn't seem to be here. Isn't he known as the person with the highest comprehension ability among the new disciples of the Flying Heaven Pavilion? He's even said to be on par with Qin Tianyi. Could it be that there's something wrong with the entrance examination of the Flying Heaven Pavilion this time?" The expressions of the 3 pavilion elders from the soaring pavilion changed slightly, and they were vaguely furious. The elder of the Black Extreme Palace acted as if he didn't see it. He shook his head bitterly and said, "Sigh, it seems that we'll have to strengthen the recruitment of disciples in the future. We can't make a conclusion based on just one examination." The disciples of the Flying Heaven Pavilion didn't look too good either. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel a little resentful towards Chu Mu, who hadn't appeared yet. The swordsmen left the secret realm of fortune, one after another, and appeared on the Heavenly Fortune platform. Then, they walked down the stairs from the Heavenly Fortune platform. Even Li Tao from the Li clan came out. He hasn't come out yet. How can he become a disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion with such a low comprehension ability? Li Tao couldn't see Chu Mu's figure and immediately laughed to himself. Subconsciously, he lowered his guard against Chu Mu. At this point, 99 swordsmen had left the secret realm of fortune. 5 hours had passed. It seems that the rumored disciple with amazing comprehension ability of the Flying Heaven Pavilion is only SOSO. He's going to be at the bottom. Yes, not only is he at the bottom, if I remember correctly, the last person to leave the Fortune Secret Realm took 4.5 hours. In that case, 2 records have been broken this time. As soon as these words came out, everyone came to a realization. The first record was naturally Long Zun breaking Qian Shanwu's record and comprehending the secret of fortune in a shorter time than Qian Shanwu. The second record was Chu Mu's record, but it was the opposite. He took longer than the last person to comprehend the secret of fortune. I heard that Chu Mu broke several records in the Flying Heaven Pavilion. It seems that he's addicted to breaking records. This time, he's going to break another record and leave a deep impression on the world. A disciple of the Black Extreme Palace said and laughed with the other disciples. Their laughter didn't have any good intentions. The people of the Black Extreme Palace were really unpleasant. 5 hours passed. About half an hour later, a ripple appeared on the Heavenly Fortune platform. Everyone knew that the last person, Chu Mu, was coming out. His figure went from blurry to solid. Chu Mu stood on the Heavenly Fortune platform and had a new experience. Closing his eyes, he could feel the strange fluctuations of heaven and earth around him. It was intoxicating. It was as if he had gone from a place with heavy air pollution to a place with no pollution. This feeling was the result of comprehending the secret of fortune. He had peeled off the membrane of heaven and earth and saw a deeper level. When Chu Mu opened his eyes, he could vaguely see streaks of light flickering through his eyes. Chu Mu also realized that it was the power of laws. Compared to the profound, the power of laws had begun to have a little substance. However, he had just comprehended the secret of fortune and was only at the entry level. Therefore, the power of laws he could see was very sparse and faint. He couldn't see it all the time. As his comprehension of the secret of fortune deepened, the power of laws he could see would become more and more clear. Those are the traces of the void laws. Chu Mu could vaguely see the various laws. Among them, there was a translucent silver law that was the clearest. He judged that this was the trace of the void laws. Because of his meditations in the good fortune mystic realm, Chu Mu's understanding and control of the void laws had broken through the limits of the void sword art and reached an even higher level. In terms of progress, he had clearly surpassed the other 9 profound truths. Taking a deep breath, he felt that the air of this world was much fresher and more lively. He stepped down the stairs. At the same time, the 100 names on the Heavenly Fortune tablet began to rapidly dissipate, starting from the first name, Myriad Mountains, as if they were being erased by an invisible strength. Everyone's attention shifted from Chu Mu to the Heavenly Fortune tablet, waiting for the results to appear. A burst of light flashed on the Heavenly Fortune tablet. At first, it was an iron-gray color. From top to bottom, it changed to a bronze color. From bottom to top, it changed to a white-silver color. From top to bottom, it finally turned a golden-yellow color. From bottom to top, the Heavenly Fortune tablet's color returned to normal. At the bottom of the Good Fortune Heaven tablet, there seemed to be an invisible hand grasping an invisible sword. It began to carve on the tablet, as if it were a calligraphy grandmaster or a peerless sculptor. Slowly, a character began to appear. As soon as the first character appeared, someone began to read it out loud. Chu Mu, I knew he would be the last one. A disciple from Extreme Black Palace loudly said. Immediately, everyone's eyes fell on Chu Mu's face. Chapter 967. Chu Mu's expression didn't change. He was calm and collected. Even if he was ranked last, he didn't care. This was because besides him, no one else knew just how great his harvests were. It was hard to imagine. The mysteries of good fortune, a deeper understanding and control of the profound truths of space, The undying sword soul, the undying sword intent. Great harvests came with a corresponding price. This wasn't strange at all. If Chu Mu were to exchange it for the honor and glory of being the #1 follower, he wouldn't be willing. At the very least, everyone knew that being ranked on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet was only a form of honor. It didn't have any substantial benefits. On the Good Fortune Heaven tablet, the second character after Chu appeared. Many people were stunned. Xiong. How could it be Xiong? Shouldn't it be Chu Mu's Mu? Only one swordsman seemed to think of something. His complexion became a bit unnatural. Then a third character appeared. At this time, everyone was sure that it wasn't Chu Mu. Chu Mu only had 2 characters, but that name had 3 characters. Chu Xiongfeng. Chu Xiongfeng? Who is Chu Xiongfeng? The people of the Flying Heaven Pavilion let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, it wasn't Chu Mu, otherwise if they were right, the Flying Heaven Pavilion would have lost a great deal of face. Even if Chu Mu was ranked 99th, it was still better than being ranked 100. The swordsman called Chu Xiongfeng had an ugly complexion. His thoughts were complicated and he didn't feel good at all. Humph, even if he isn't ranked 100th, he's still ranked 99th. There's no difference. That's right. No matter how you look at it, the Flying Heaven Pavilion is on par with our Black Extreme Palace, and yet, the 2 disciples of the Extreme Black Palace were acting out an enigmatic scene. Chu Mu ignored them. He really didn't care what his ranking was. He didn't even pay too much attention to it. Instead, he focused on the sword soul in his spiritual world. He carefully sensed the strength contained within it and slowly familiarized himself with it. Chu Mu's indifference caused some of the people secretly observing him to nod. They felt that his attitude was quite good. The name on the 100th position appeared. Then, the invisible hand and invisible sword moved once more, carving the name on the 99th position. The first word was not Chu. It's not Chu Mu again. He sounded a little disappointed. Everyone in the Flying Heaven Pavilion heaved a sigh of relief. 98, 97th. 96, one name after another appeared. When it reached the 90th position, it was still not Chu Mu's name. At this moment, the faces of those who had mocked Chu Mu turned ugly. That shouldn't be the case. Chu Mu was the last one to come out. He should be ranked 100. Why isn't he ranked 100? A swordsman asked. Many people were wondering the same thing. According to everyone's understanding, the ranking on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet was the same as the order in which one left the Good Fortune mystic realm. But now that didn't seem to be the case. Everyone's understanding of the creation secret realm on the creation heavenly platform was only superficial. In truth, the ranking of disciples on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet isn't based on the order in which they left the Good Fortune mystic realm. The middle-aged man from Sword God Hall slowly said. Everyone pricked up their ears. Many people hadn't heard of this before, so they waited for the next explanation. With a faint smile, the middle-aged swordsman from Sword God Hall continued, the ranking of disciples on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet is actually based on the order in which a swordsman perceives the mysteries of good fortune. In the past, after perceiving the mysteries of good fortune, one would immediately leave the Good Fortune mystic realm. Thus, the ranking on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet is the same as the order in which one left the Good Fortune mystic realm. This is why it is believed that there is a direct relationship between the two. In other words, although Chu Mu was the last to leave the Good Fortune mystic realm, he wasn't the last to perceive the mysteries of good fortune. A disciple from the Flying Heaven Pavilion nodded. Then, after perceiving the mysteries of good fortune, why didn't he directly leave the Good Fortune mystic realm? Why did he stay inside? A question was asked, but no one answered. Chu Mu also didn't answer. If that's the case, then what is Chu Mu's ranking? I don't know either. Let's continue watching. The middle-aged man from Sword God Hall looked at Chu Mu and smiled. On the Good Fortune Heaven tablet, from bottom to top, 13 names had already appeared. Chu Mu wasn't among them. This caused some people to look forward to seeing Chu Mu's final ranking. Unknowingly, Chu Mu had once again become the focus of attention. Chu Mu's expression didn't change. In fact, most of his energy was focused on studying the sword soul in his spiritual world. He could hear, see, and remember what was happening in the outside world. He just didn't pay attention to it. In the eyes of others, this indifferent appearance made them feel that Chu Mu's temperament was extremely good. The middle-aged man from Sword God Hall nodded inwardly. One name after another appeared. Soon, 50 names had already appeared on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet, but Chu Mu's name still wasn't there. The sword soul has only been transformed by the inextinguishable power. My inextinguishable sword intent is only at the entry level, but its power is several times stronger than before. If I use a sword skill, its power will definitely increase by several times. Chu Mu thought to himself. A 4th-grade sword skill that had its power increased by several times might not be comparable to a 5th-grade sword skill, but among 4th-grade sword skills, it was definitely at the top level. It was very, very strong. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people here, Chu Mu would have drawn his sword and tested it out. There are already 70 names, but Chu Mu still isn't there. It looks like he can rank in the top 30. The 3 pavilion elders of the Flying Heaven Pavilion smiled. If they had always believed that Chu Mu could win first place, then seeing that Chu Mu couldn't obtain first place, they would have felt an unconcealable disappointment in their hearts. On the contrary, after being ridiculed and slandered by the people of Extreme Black Palace, in addition to the fact that Chu Mu was the last to leave the Good Fortune Mystic Realm, the people of the Flying Heaven Pavilion didn't have any expectations for Chu Mu. They were disappointed to the extreme. But now, Chu Mu had exceeded their expectations. He wasn't in the last place, and Chu Mu's name wasn't even in the last 70. At the same time, they were also a bit happy. As long as Chu Mu entered the top 30, they wouldn't feel ashamed. Of course, the higher the better. 90 names appeared, but Chu Mu's name still wasn't there. What's going on? Could it be that Chu Mu can enter the top 10? The 3 pavilion elders and disciples of the Flying Heaven Pavilion were also very happy. Being in the top 10 was also a kind of honor, even if it couldn't be compared to being in first place, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th. Everyone's eyes were focused on the top. 95 names had already appeared, but Chu Mu still wasn't there. I knew it. With Chu Mu's perception, it's impossible for him to be ranked so low. It's possible for him to enter the top 3. A pavilion elder's voice was filled with excitement. The 4th name appeared, but it wasn't Chu Mu's. In other words, Chu Mu would enter the top 3. The Dragon Sovereign couldn't help but glance at Chu Mu. But he wasn't worried at all, because he was sure that the first-ranked disciple would be himself. The 3rd name also appeared. Ling Su, isn't that a disciple of Shattered Star Hall? Could Chu Mu be in 2nd place? This was because Tsang Mo and the others' names had already appeared on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. Invisible hands and invisible swords continued to carve on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. That character, why doesn't it look like the character Chu? That character looks a bit like a dragon. Someone whispered. The Dragon Sovereign's complexion changed. His eyes shined with a sharp light as he stared at the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. He couldn't help but feel nervous. This was because he could see that the character that was about to appear didn't look like the character Chu, but more like the character Dragon. Of the 100 swordsmen, 98 names had already appeared on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. Only Chu Mu and the Dragon Sovereign's names hadn't appeared yet. Since that character didn't look like the character Chu, then it had to be the character Dragon. How could I be in 2nd place? The Dragon Sovereign's eyes widened in disbelief. As he thought, that character appeared. It really was the character Dragon. It really was the character Dragon. With a schwa sound, the blood drained from the Dragon Sovereign's face. His eyes shined with disbelief. The Dragon Sovereign. It's the Dragon Sovereign! Shouldn't the Dragon Sovereign be in first place? How could he be in second place? If the Dragon Sovereign is in second place, then the first place should be Chu Mu. A loud shout sounded out, a bit sharp. Suddenly, everyone's eyes focused on Chu Mu's face. Chu Mu, the last swordsman to leave the good fortune mystic realm, was actually the first follower? When the Dragon Sovereign's name appeared, an invisible hand and invisible sword moved upwards, beginning to carve the last name, the first name. The first character of the first name was written with the character Chu. Every stroke was sonorous and forceful, sinking 3 inches into the tablet. A large, vigorous, and mysterious Chu character appeared. Many people felt as if their hearts were being squeezed, as if their throats were being gripped. Their faces flushed red and they found it hard to breathe. The second character appeared. Mu. Chu Mu. First follower, Chu Mu. Chu Mu also revealed a trace of surprise. He never thought that he would become the first follower on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. Within the Good Fortune mystic realm, his harvests had been enormous, and now he had become the first follower on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. If he said he wasn't happy, it would be a lie. Thus, Chu Mu smiled, a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. The Dragon Sovereign's complexion changed several times before he finally calmed down, revealing his extraordinary temperament. At this time, the 3 pavilion elders of the Flying Heaven Pavilion were extremely excited. They were so excited that they nearly fainted. They never thought that not only would Chu Mu not be in last place, but he would actually obtain the honor of being the first follower. This wasn't just Chu Mu's glory, but also the glory of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Last time, the first follower had been the Sky Splitter Sword Sect's 1,000 Mountains Pathless. This time, they thought that the disciples of the 5 great influences wouldn't have a chance, and that the first follower would fall into the hands of an outsider like the Dragon Sovereign. But who knew that the situation would suddenly change? The first follower was actually Chu Mu. Chapter 968. Good, good, good. The 3 pavilion elders took turns patting Chu Mu's shoulders. Their beards twitched in excitement. Then, they looked at the Black Extreme Palace elder and said, "You're right. In the future, when we recruit new disciples, we will have to strengthen the test. It would be best if they were like our Flying Heaven Pavilion." The faces of the Black Extreme Palace elders and disciples were as black as the bottom of a pot. This was a naked slap to the face, and a naked slap to the face in public at that. The loud slaps made them feel so ashamed that they couldn't even show their faces. The Black Extreme Palace disciples wished they could dig a deep hole and crawl into it. But the Black Extreme Palace elder was a wily old fox. His complexion quickly returned to normal. He chuckled and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. Having such a genius is the great fortune of our human race. If you need anything, you can let us know. Our Black Extreme Palace will do our best to help you find heavenly materials that can increase your cultivation talent. There's no need for you to worry." The Flying Heaven Pavilion elder coldly snorted. As for the Black Extreme Palace disciples, their faces darkened as they stared at Chu Mu. Their gazes were extremely unfriendly. "I was wrong just now. I apologize to Chu Mu." Suddenly, the Black Extreme Palace's Ho Xiaowei spoke to Chu Mu. He was the #1 disciple of the Black Extreme Palace. His status in the Black Extreme Palace was similar to Tsang Mo's status in the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Chu Mu glanced at him and didn't say anything. His intuition told him that since Ho Xiaowei had taken the initiative to apologize, he wasn't really apologizing. He was probably plotting something. As expected, Ho Xiaowei faintly smiled. His expression was a bit gloomy. In fact, after becoming a disciple of the Black Extreme Palace and cultivating their cultivation methods, a person's temperament would subtly change and become somewhat dark. I heard that a new disciple had appeared in the Flying Heaven Pavilion, and I wanted to meet him one day. Now, this person has become the #1 disciple on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. I can't help but want to meet him. Ho Xiaowei stared at Chu Mu and said provocatively, "What do you think, number one disciple? Let's spar." As he spoke, Ho Xiaowei pulled out his sword and drew a sword flower in full bloom. It was vivid and lifelike as it pointed at Chu Mu. His provocation was even more obvious. "Ho Xiaowei, if you want to play, I'll play with you." Song Emo took a step forward and said coldly. The number of disciples in the Flying Heaven Pavilion was many times smaller than the number of disciples in the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect, the Extreme Black Palace, and the Myriad Mountains Villa. This also made the disciples of the Flying Heaven Pavilion more united in most situations. Internal strife was one thing, but once there were external enemies, they would unite against them. "Song Mo, if you want to challenge me, sure. Wait until I defeat Chu Mu." Ho Xiaowei glanced at Song Mo and said casually, not taking him seriously at all. He revealed his contempt for Chu Mu and felt that he could easily defeat Chu Mu. "I'm afraid you won't have that chance," Chu Mu lightly said. His figure flashed and he appeared in the distance. There were too many people around the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. It wasn't convenient to use it. "Don't worry, I will show mercy." Ho Xiaohui's eyes flashed with a dark glint. He chuckled. Appearing in front of Chu Mu, Ho Xiaohui lightly tapped his foot and his figure instantly exploded, turning into numerous black figures. They were incomparably fast as they attacked from all directions. This was a 4th grade movement sword skill. After comprehending the mysteries of good fortune, one's understanding and application of sword skills had deepened. It was much easier to use, and its power had increased by a great deal. Ho Xiaohui's glimpse of Black Demon movement sword skill has become even more skillful. An extreme Black Palace elder nodded, not stingy with his praise. "In the past, when I was at his cultivation level, I feared I would have been defeated by this move." Many people nodded inwardly. Ho Xiaohui's movement sword skill was indeed exquisite. The reason Chu Mu agreed to fight with Ho Xiaohui, besides Ho Xiaohui's cheap mouth, was because he also wanted to test just how much the power of his sword skills had increased after comprehending the mysteries of good fortune. Ho Xiaohui didn't warn Lin Ming at all. He directly attacked, displaying a 4th grade movement sword skill. It was incomparably exquisite. Even Divine Sense couldn't distinguish between real and fake, much less lock onto it. Ho Xiaohui had made up his mind. He would erupt with his full strength in an instant and defeat Chu Mu. He would let everyone witness just how the number one disciple had been defeated by his sword. Towards those who provoked him, Chu Mu would never be polite. His eyes flashed like cold stars as he caught sight of over 100 black figures. His right hand moved and he grasped the hilt of the retractable sword with lightning speed. Then, Chu Mu closed his eyes. His ears trembled slightly. All the pores on his body opened and closed, contracting. His skin instantly became very sensitive, and he could clearly feel all the aura fluctuations in the outside world. Chu Mu suddenly realized that after comprehending the mysteries of good fortune, he could feel all the energy fluctuations in the world more clearly. When he used both the sword sense and the sword sense at the same time, the feeling was even more wonderful. It was even more wonderful than seeing with his eyes. It was completely different from seeing with his divine sense, but it wasn't any weaker. True and false, false and true. Ho Xiaohui closed in and unleashed a 4th grade close combat sword skill. From a strange angle, he slashed towards Chu Mu's ribs. If he was hit, Chu Mu's treasured clothes and inner armor wouldn't be able to withstand it. His entire body would be cut in two. The retractable sword was unsheathed and he instantly displayed the 4th grade defensive sword skill, Immovable Mountain. Ho Xiaohui's sword was successfully blocked by Chu Mu. Chu Mu also took advantage of the momentum to lean back slightly. His purpose was to display the defensive counterattack sword skill, Cloud Breaking Flash. The collision of the 4th grade sword skills caused a shocking aftershock. Rays of light shot into the sky and cut open the ground. Under the strong rebounding force, Ho Xiaohui's sword was bounced up. Chu Mu seized the moment and displayed the cloud-breaking flash. The dark golden sword light condensed. In an instant it seemed to have traversed the sky, causing those who were watching it to be shocked. He immediately cancelled the defensive sword skill after displaying it, and then displayed the defensive counterattack sword skill in an instant. This child's grasp of the timing of the battle can be said to be extreme. This kind of talent is really amazing. The middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall looked at Chu Mu and nodded slightly. There was a trace of admiration in his eyes. The timing of Chu Mu's counterattack sword skill was really amazing. Many people thought that they would not be able to do it. Ho Xiaohui's expression changed greatly. His eyes were filled with the dark golden sword light. He only had time to barely block with his sword in front of him. Immediately, he was struck by Chu Mu's sword. The sonorous collision was as if a tyrannical primordial ferocious beast had collided head-on. The sword shook violently. The terrifying impact caused Ho Xiaohui's palm to go numb. At the same time, there was a tearing pain. The bones in his forearm let out cracking sounds. He knew that the bones in his palm and forearm must have been injured and cracked. However, he did not have the time to care about this because the terrifying impact was coming. A portion of the tyrannical power passed through the sword and blasted towards his chest. The treasured robe and inner armor weakened a portion of the power, but there was still a portion of the power that hit his chest. His breastbone let out a slight cracking sound as if it was about to crack. The sword flew out of his hand and Ho Xiaohui's body flew back like a cannonball. Blood gushed up from his mouth. He couldn't help but open it and spit it out. With a bang, Ho Xiaohui was sent flying over 100 meters before smashing heavily into the hard ground, creating a crater. Cracks spread out at lightning speed. Everyone's mouths were wide open. Only after 3 breaths did the disciples of the extreme Black Palace react. They quickly ran over and helped the pale and heavily injured Ho Xiaohui up. Chu Mu was also a bit surprised. He didn't think that the power of this sword skill would be so strong. It had to be known that he had only used half of its power. The moment he struck Ho Xiaohui, he had pulled back some of its power. Otherwise, Ho Xiaohui's injuries would have been even worse. He might even have been killed by his sword. If it was another occasion, killing Ho Xiaohui wouldn't have been a big deal. However, it was not appropriate here. The faces of the elders of the extreme Black Palace were incomparably gloomy. Their eyes emitted a sharp light and were overflowing with killing intent. One of them suddenly made a move. A pitch-black sword light shot out and tore through the air. Chu Mu was greatly alarmed. He felt a pain between his brows. He could only feel the shadow of death enveloping him. The darkness was invading him, and he was unable to dodge. "Damn it, you actually dared to make a move!" The expression of the pavilion elder of the Flying Heaven Pavilion greatly changed. He hurriedly tried to save Chu Mu, but he was a step too late. The black sword light had already closed in on Chu Mu. At the moment of crisis, a shadow flickered and the black sword light was shattered. It was the middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall who had appeared to save Chu Mu. Chu Mu couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. His heart was wildly beating. In that instant he was so close to death. As an elder, you actually dared to attack a junior. You've gone too far. Before the pavilion elder of the Flying Heaven Pavilion could open his mouth to question him, the middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall spoke first. His tone was light, but it was somewhat heavy. His eyes flickered as he stared at the elder of the extreme Black Palace. "I only acted because I saw that one of our disciples was injured. I guarantee that there won't be a next time," the tall and thin elder of the extreme Black Palace hurriedly said. However, he knew very well what he was thinking in his heart. His reason was only 30% true. 70% was probably to get rid of Chu Mu. If there's a next time, the Flying Heaven Pavilion and the Extreme Black Palace will not rest until one of us is dead. One of the pavilion elders of the Flying Heaven Pavilion stared into the elder's eyes. "It's a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding." The elder of the Extreme Black Palace's expression changed, and he immediately began to laugh. If the Flying Heaven Pavilion and the Extreme Black Palace really didn't rest until one of them was dead, then they would become sinners. This was a crime that they couldn't bear. "Many thanks for Senior's help." Chu Mu formally performed a sword salute to the middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall. As for repaying the favor, he didn't say anything. There was no need for that because he currently didn't have the ability to do so. The middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall smiled and nodded. Chu Mu looked at the elder of the Extreme Black Palace, who wanted to kill him, and asked in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "May I ask for this elder's name?" This old man is called Su Jing. My cultivation base is at the second layer of the Aeon realm." The elder of the Extreme Black Palace chuckled, not bothering to hide his disdain. "You're welcome to take revenge on me at any time. The prerequisite is that you have to live until then." Chapter 969. Chu Mu didn't respond to Su Jing's words, but he did have the intention to get back at him in the future. He had a grudge in his heart, and one day, he would definitely vent it out. In the immemorial world, the human race is declining. We should be united instead of fighting among ourselves. The middle-aged man from the Heavenly Sword Hall glanced at Su Jing, then at the crowd, and said lightly, "The Heavenly Creation Platform is also closing. Everyone, go back to where you came from. Goodbye. See you next time." Everyone cupped their hands and bowed, then turned and left. Before Li Tao left, he glanced at Chu Mu, as if he was thinking of something. "Chu Mu, if you come to the Chaos Territory, you can come to the True Dragon Dynasty to find me," said Longzuan. He waved his hand and a small sword light shot towards Chu Mu. There was no killing intent or danger. Chu Mu reached out his hand, and a small golden sword the length of a finger appeared in his hand. 2 words were carved on it, "Crown Prince." After throwing the small golden sword to Chu Mu, Longzuan soared into the sky, forming a dragon-shaped chi, and flew away. The Flying Heaven Pavilion had a secret sword technique, like the sword controlling technique. As a stronger force than the Flying Heaven Pavilion, it was normal for the True Dragon Dynasty to have a similar flying secret sword technique. The people from the 5 forces also left one after another. "Chu Mu, are you coming back to the Flying Heaven Pavilion with us, or?" asked an elder from the Flying Heaven Pavilion. "Elder, I plan to continue my training outside," said Chu Mu. "That's fine too. But you must be careful," the pavilion elder instructed. The Flying Heaven Pavilion wouldn't protect its disciples like a hen protecting its chicks, because it would be difficult for the disciples to truly grow. Going out to train was a way to grow. There would be danger, and they might even die, but at the same time, there would be great rewards. Apart from Chu Mu, who had to train outside, Fang Qingtian, Lu Buping, and Li Donghe, the 3 new disciples of the Soaring Sky Court were also training together. As for the others like Tsang Mo and the others, they returned to the Flying Heaven Pavilion with the 3 pavilion elders. "Chu Mu, do you want to train with us?" Fang Qingtian glanced at Chu Mu and asked calmly. "No need." Chu Mu refused. "As you wish," Fang Qingtian said plainly, turning around and leaving with the other 2. Chu Mu did not mind. He was not close to Fang Qingtian and the others. In a tranquil valley, there were countless stones of varying sizes scattered about. Chu Mu sat cross-legged on one of the rocks. The rock had been flattened by a sword, making it as smooth as a mirror. Then, he laid a praying mat on top of it, and it became a place for him to practice. He was trying his best to understand the Wukong profoundness. In the creation secret realm, his understanding of the Wukong profoundness had surpassed the level of the Void Sword principle. Now, he was improving his application and mastery of the Wukong profoundness to the same level as his understanding. In fact, the other 4 forces also had the various sword principles of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. The nine-sword principles evolved one type of Wukong to the extreme, but it was not enough. If he wanted to transform the Wukong profoundness into the power of laws, he would need to improve his understanding and application of the Wukong profoundness to a level beyond the nine-sword principles. This was the level that Chu Mu's Wukong profoundness had reached. As long as Chu Mu activated the Wukong profoundness in his spiritual world and focused his divine telekinesis on his eyes, he would be able to capture the aura of the Wukong law between heaven and earth. However, because he was still in the God condensation realm, even though he had comprehended the essence of creation, he had not truly broken through to the creation realm. Therefore, he could not truly transform the Wukong profoundness into the Wukong law. Moreover, his cultivation talent had not risen to the 4th grade, so his cultivation could not break through. Chu Mu also planned to use this period of time to find the earthroot, to refine the great amplification pill, to do his best to improve himself and increase his potential. After breaking through to the creation realm and becoming the sword of Gojoseon, he would be even more powerful. He tried hard to sense the Wukong profoundness in the air. It was weaker than the Wukong law. His tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and a translucent silver thread was faintly discernible. The translucent silver thread was very fine and fluctuated as if it would disappear at any time. Chu Mu tried hard to capture it, using his divine telekinesis to touch it and feel it intermittently. His goal was very simple. It was to improve his mastery and application of the Wukong profoundness, and then create a sword skill of the void. So far, he had comprehended 10 Wukong profoundness, and had created 9 related sword skills. He had also managed to combine 4 different Wukong profoundness to create a powerful 4th grade sword skill. Only the Wukong profoundness of the void had not been created yet. In the past, because his understanding of the Wukong profoundness was not deep enough, he did not have the foundation to create a sword skill of the void. Now that he had finally reached this level, it was time to create one. Chu Mu was also looking forward to creating a sword skill of the void. The power of the sword skill of the void alone was much stronger than other sword skills. If he combined the 9 sword skills of the void into one, its power would even be comparable to a powerful 3rd grade human tier earth-breaching sword skill. If it was a sword skill created with the Wukong profoundness of the void, its power would not be weak. It would definitely surpass a 3rd grade human tier earth-breaching sword skill. He comprehended it with all his might. Chu Mu put his fingers together like a sword and drew a trace in the void. The trace gradually approached the translucent silver thread that was constantly changing in his eyes. The closer he got, the more Chu Mu felt that his mastery of the Wukong profoundness of the void had improved and he was becoming more familiar with it. In the spiritual world, the power of divine sense was constantly being consumed, but Chu Mu did not notice it. He constantly calibrated, constantly capturing the trace of the translucent silver thread, and then used his sword finger. When the trace of the sword finger overlapped with the trace of the translucent silver thread, the sword finger left a faint translucent trace in the air and dissipated after 3 breaths. This feeling. Chu Mu closed his eyes again and grasped the feeling of that moment to comprehend it. Unknowingly, the power of divine sense was completely consumed. Chu Mu felt dizzy and hurriedly took out an elixir to recover the power of divine sense. At the same time, he cultivated the first half of the pupil of sword secret method to speed up the recovery of the power of divine sense. When the power of divine sense was completely recovered, Chu Mu comprehended it again. This time, he did not use his sword finger, but he pulled out the no-return sword. The sword was an extension of the arm. In the realm of the union of man and sword, the sword in the hand seemed to grow directly from the arm and was connected by blood. As the realm of the union of man and sword deepened, the feeling of being connected by blood became more and more obvious. The no-return sword was gently swung out. It was light and did not exert any force, but it left a faint trace in the air. Chu was using the no-return sword to draw the same trace of the translucent silver thread that was faintly discernible. The success rate was not very high. He could only succeed once in a dozen attempts. Once he succeeded, the trace of the no-return sword would remain in the air for 3 breaths before fading away. He kept swinging the no-return sword and became more and more familiar with it. He could match the trace of the sword every few times. When the power of divine sense was depleted, it would recover again. After recovering, he would continue to cultivate. This valley was very remote and there were few traces of people. There was no need to worry about being disturbed. The sun rose and the moon set. Just like that, 3 days passed. Chu was already able to swing the sword twice. Each time, it would match the trace of the sword. After matching, the trace of the no-return sword would remain in the air for 4 breaths. This was a huge improvement. However, this was not enough. He still needed to continue cultivating. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Chu was already able to match the trace of the sword every time he swung the sword. The no-return sword was swung out again and again, leaving traces of the sword in the air. After 5 breaths, the traces of the sword gradually dissipated. A kind of enlightenment suddenly emerged from the depths of his soul and appeared in his mind. I see. Perhaps I can give it a try, Chu said to himself. He concentrated and recalled the sword of the void sword principle. He immediately swung it. However, this sword did not match the trace of the sword, so it was not effective. Collecting his thoughts, Chu concentrated again and swung the sword. His willpower was very strong. Even if he failed again and again, he would try again and again. If he did not succeed, he would not give up. On the 5th day, Chu did not know how many times he had swung the no-return sword in his hand. This sword corresponded with the trace of the sword. It overlapped with the trace of the sword. A strange scene appeared. An extremely fine translucent silver light cut through the sky and slashed at a huge rock a dozen meters away. Silently, the top half of the huge rock slanted down. His figure flashed and appeared on top of the huge rock that was cut off. He carefully observed the cut. The more he looked, the more surprised he was. Terrifying power! Chu could not help but say to himself. Although he could easily cut such a huge rock without using any sword skills, he could still judge the power contained in that slash by looking at the marks left behind. It is definitely at the level of a grade 4 sword skill. Chu thought to himself. Initial success was only the beginning. He still needed to truly master it. Chu tirelessly cultivated. Holding the no-return sword in his hand, his eyes flickered. He caught the translucent silver light in the air and then used the sword of the void sword principle to match the trace of the sword. This was very difficult and the success rate was not high. However, after succeeding once, Chu received a huge amount of motivation. He was not discouraged. Day after day passed. 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, casually swinging the sword, a huge rock 100 meters away was silently split in half. It slowly fell down from the left and right. After a short rest, Chu once again swung the sword. Another seemingly casual swing of the sword. A huge rock 300 meters away was silently split in half. The crack was extremely fine. After a month of continuous comprehension and cultivation, Chu finally created a void sword principle. After many attempts, Chu was sure that the power of this void sword principle was at the grade 4 level. However, because of the undying sword intent and the profound of space, it was close to the peak of grade 4. Compared to breaking clouds seeing blue sky, it was only slightly weaker. Although it was slightly weaker than breaking clouds sees the clear sky, in terms of speed, it was several times faster than breaking clouds sees the clear sky. Furthermore, the attack was silent and not obvious. It was much more practical than breaking clouds sees the clear sky. The only flaw was that when using it, one had to first capture the trace and then match it. Moreover, the consumption was 10 times more than breaking clouds seeing blue sky. Chapter 970. In the entire mountain valley, all of the boulders had been cut into pieces. The cut was incomparably smooth, smoother than a mirror. It was hard to feel any residual fluctuations. This was the result of Chu Mu's cultivation. Looking at the mountain valley he had stayed in for nearly 2 months, Chu Mu sheathed his sword. He leapt into the air, turning into a beam of light that rapidly flew away. He didn't use the imperial sword technique, but used the profound truths of space to fly. However, using the profound truths of space to fly consumed far too much of one's divine sense and sword essence. Chu Mu only gave it a try. His speed wasn't any slower than flying on a sword, and his flexibility far surpassed it. After flying for a period of time, Chu Mu stopped. He fell to the ground and switched to using his footwork to run. Half a day later, Chu Mu was blocked by some people. Or rather, he was intercepted. Intercepting him were 10 people, 10 black-robed men. Each of them was covered from head to toe in a long black robe. The only difference was that one of the robes was slightly different from the other 9. It was inlaid with silver. The aura that this silver-rimmed black-robed man emitted was far more tyrannical than the other 9 black-robed men. Chu Mu's heart chilled. This person might be a king-level powerhouse, but he didn't know what level of king-level they were. Chu Mu, this is the first time we've met. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lu Su and I come from Black Prison. The silver-rimmed black-robed man said. His tone seemed as if he placed Chu Mu on the same level as him. Chu Mu had already guessed this. Hearing that this person came from Black Prison, he wasn't too surprised. His thoughts raced as he considered their intentions and how to escape. Don't worry. As if guessing Chu Mu's thoughts, the silver-rimmed black-robed man Lu Su calmly said, "We have no ill intentions. Our previous grudges can also be written off." "What's your goal?" Chu Mu asked. "For you, it's a simple matter." Lu Su chuckled. "Your talent is very high. This time, you even became the number 1 disciple on the Good Fortune Heaven tablet. Our Black Prison admires geniuses like you the most, so we sincerely invite you to join us and become our companion." No matter how he thought about it, Chu Mu would never have thought that the other party's goal was to make him join Black Prison and become a member of Black Prison. Would Chu Mu join Black Prison? Of course not. His understanding of Black Jail was very shallow, but that did not stop him from feeling disgusted with Black Jail. How could he join an organization that he hated? Not interested. Chu Mu directly refused. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Lu Su seemed to have expected that Chu Mu would refuse. He calmly said, "I know that you are a disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion, but that doesn't prevent you from becoming a member of Black Prison. Our Black Prison's strength is not weaker than the Flying Heaven Pavilion. In terms of scale, we are even larger than the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Even the Sky-Splitting Sword sect cannot compare with us. Black Prison traverses several large regions and news travels far and wide. As long as you join us with your talent, you will definitely be valued and heavily nurtured so that you can grow as quickly as possible. Powerful swords, powerful cultivation methods and secret skills, as well as all sorts of cultivation holy lands and various pills, we can provide you with all of them." Lu Su continued. It had to be said that Lu Su's words were quite tempting. However, how could Chu Mu be so easily moved? "I can consider it," Chu Mu said. Then, he suddenly asked, "What if I still refuse?" "There is only one consequence for refusing Black Prison. You should know that," Lu Su said. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold sword light shot towards him. The biting cold killing intent almost froze him. As the sword of Gojoseon, Lu Su's reaction was extremely fast. He immediately counterattacked with his sword. At the same time, another sword appeared in Chu Mu's hand. Like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, he rushed towards the other 9 black-robed men surrounding him. These 9 black-robed men's strength could be considered relatively strong among those at the peak of the divine condensation realm. However, compared to Chumu, there was a huge difference. When Chumu attacked, he showed no mercy. As sword light flashed, the 9 black-robed men were slaughtered one by one. Lu Su's sword knocked away the sword of no return. When he saw that all 9 of his subordinates had died under Chumu's sword, he was both shocked and furious. "I will kill you." Lu Su was furious. He slashed out with his sword. In an instant, sword light poured down like a torrential downpour. It was a high second-grade earth sword skill. A strong sense of danger engulfed his entire body. Chumu was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly used his movement skill, shocking rainbow, and dodged in an instant. Under the bombardment of the sword light, the 9 black-robed men's corpses were smashed into countless pieces. The ground was also blasted open with fist-sized craters. Each crater was dozens of meters deep and emitted an intense, sharp aura. This made Chumu's heart tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that he had comprehended the mysteries of creation and had a deeper understanding of various mysteries, and that his sword skill had reached a perfect level, he definitely wouldn't have been able to dodge that sword skill. The result of not being able to dodge was obvious from the broken corpses of the black-robed men. Sure enough, even if he had comprehended the mysteries of creation and his strength had increased significantly, he still wouldn't be able to fight against a sword of Gojoseon under normal circumstances, even if it was the lowest-level sword of Gojoseon. Without hesitation, the instant he used the movement technique Shocking Rainbow to dodge, Chumu immediately used the large success Burning Blood transformation. His speed once again increased by 3 times, making him even faster. While using the defensive sword art, he held his sword and attacked Lu Su. He closed his eyes and used all his strength to operate the sword sense and sword touch. With the combination of the two, he could sense all the changes in the outside world more directly and clearly. Lu Su was a sword of Gojoseon, and his swordsmanship was also extraordinary. However, compared to Chumu, he was still far behind. After a few moves, he was at a disadvantage in terms of technique. However, he had mastered the power of rules, which was much more powerful than Chumu's profound. If it weren't for the defensive sword art attacking from the side, which distracted Chumu's attention and power, Chumu wouldn't have been able to resist. Even so, Chumu also experienced the power of rules at close range. If it weren't for Lu Su's sword of Gojoseon being too ordinary, only having the strength of 1 star and only being able to integrate 2 types of rules into his sword, Chumu would have been at a disadvantage. Fortunately, Chumu had the undying sword intent and had integrated 3 types of profound into his sword. Moreover, he had also used the mountain quaking force to the extreme. Under such conditions, coupled with the defensive sword art, he was able to fight evenly with Lu Su in close combat. Lu Su was extremely shocked. He never thought that a God Condensation Realm swordsman, even if he had comprehended the mysteries of creation, would be able to fight with him in close combat. Moreover, Lu Su's swordsmanship was extremely brilliant. His killing intent became even stronger. He had already made such a genius his enemy, so he definitely couldn't let him grow. His sword intent seems to be different from ordinary sword intents. Could it be an attribute sword intent? During the fight, the swords clashed a few times, and Lu Su gradually felt that something was wrong. His sword intent had only been refined to the limit of the 7th revolution, which couldn't be compared to Chumu's limit of the 8th revolution. Moreover, it was only an ordinary sword intent, so it couldn't be compared to an attribute sword intent. Among the attribute sword intents, there were also different levels. The undying sword intent was undoubtedly one of the top sword intents among the various attribute. With such an increase, the power of Chumu's sword intent was 10 times that of Lu Su's sword intent. If Chumu's cultivation base broke through to the creation realm, the power of his sword intent would increase, and it wouldn't be just a difference of 10 times. The swords clashed, and the tyrannical power, the sword intent, the power of laws and profound, and the mountain quaking force all cancelled each other out. In an instant, Lu Su used a close combat sword skill. His sword turned into a red stream of light, and a raging fire seemed to burn the earth as it blasted towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu was shocked and hurriedly used immovable mountain to defend himself. When using swordsmanship to fight, the difference between the power of laws and profound would be made up by the sword intent and mountain quaking force. However, when using sword skills, the power of laws would be increased, and the difference between the power of laws and profound sword skills would be even more obvious. Fortunately, this was only an advanced second-grade earth rank sword skill, and immovable mountain could resist for a moment. It was enough. Chu Mu immediately used his body movement sword skill, shocking rainbow, and turned into a stunning stream of light. In the blink of an eye, he retreated. It wasn't that he didn't want to use a defensive counterattack sword skill, but under the slash of his opponent's sword skill, the power was too tyrannical, and the rebounding force was also too strong. He couldn't grasp the timing. Chu Mu didn't show any weakness. He attacked with his sword, and a thunderstorm blasted out. This thunderstorm only had a range of dozens of meters. It didn't look like the hundreds of meters before, but in fact, its power was concentrated in it, and it was even more tyrannical. The terrifying thunderstorm swept towards Lu Su. Lu Su was inwardly shocked. A human-rank sword skill could actually make him feel a trace of fear. Just as he was about to use his sword skill to break the thunderstorm, he saw the terrifying storm being broken apart by a dark golden crescent moon. That crescent moon carried an incomparably powerful force as it slashed over. This caused Lu Su's heart to tremble, and the fear in his heart increased by several degrees. Under the defensive sword technique, the unreturnable sword circled around and shot towards Lu Su from behind. It was a pincer attack with cloud-piercing sky. Lu Su swung his sword, and after repelling the defensive sword technique, he executed a sword skill and slashed towards cloud-piercing sky. His combat skills were average. Now, a silver light flashed in Chu Mu's eyes. Through the edge of the dark golden crescent moon, he saw a faintly discernible trajectory flickering on Lu Su's body as he slashed out with his sword. The light sword didn't carry any smoke or fire. Instead, it had an ethereal feeling. The sword's trajectory instantly overlapped with the flickering trajectory on Lu Su's body. It was silent and incomparably fast. Lu Su only felt that something was wrong when he was already hit by Space Scar. The protective sword aura was instantly cut open. The black robe on his body wasn't a treasure, and it was instantly cut open. The top royal rank inner armor on his body couldn't withstand the power of Space Scar, and was cut open. The space sword skill, Space Scar, displayed its magnificence for the first time. In an instant, Lu Su was injured. Half of his waist was cut open, and it was incomparably smooth. The flesh around the wound had completely disappeared, and intense pain invaded his body, interrupting the sword skill he was about to execute. Cloud-piercing sky attacked once again with the defensive sword technique, attacking from the front and back. Lu Su's face changed drastically, but he couldn't dodge in time. Instantly, his back was stabbed, and the dark golden crescent moon killed him directly in front. Chapter 971. The divine slaughter weapon revolved and a wisp of gray aura flew out from the sword of Gojoseon's corpse. It was absorbed by Chu Mu to nourish his sword embryo. Unfortunately, even though the sword of Gojoseon's corpse was split in half, he was unable to plunder his cultivation talent. The other 9 black-robed men were in pieces, and even their resentment had dissipated. He was unable to absorb or plunder their resentment. Chu Mu's harvest was only 10 interspatial rings. Moreover, the sword of Gojoseon's interspatial rings had so little wealth that Chu Mu was shocked. He consumed the blood yang pill to recover his essence blood and used the imperial sword technique to quickly leave. With my current strength, I can barely fight against an ordinary Ichino sword of Gojoseon without using the burning blood transformation. If I use the burning blood transformation, I can kill an ordinary Ichino sword of Gojoseon. As he flew away on the sword light, he pondered over the previous battle. The reason he was able to kill Lu Su was because of his new sword skill, Void Scar. Although the power of Void Scar was not as strong as cloud-piercing sky-revealing sky, it was better in that it was silent and extremely fast. The moment the sword was unsheathed, it was impossible to dodge. Furthermore, Lu Su did not have a suitable treasure armor and his inner armor was only at the peak of the royal grade. Together with his protective sword aura, it was impossible for him to resist Void Scar. If I use the Divine Desolate Sword art, I can kill an ordinary 2-star sword of Gojoseon. Chumu thought to himself. He had a clearer understanding of his own strength. With a thought, Zhang Xian executed his sword manipulation art and utilized the profound of space. In an instant, the speed of his sword manipulation art increased by several folds, making it even more nimble and agile. However, it consumed a lot of spiritual sense and sword energy. Chumu immediately stopped after trying it out. There was no other way. The more mysterious and powerful it was, the more energy it consumed. This was the law. After flying for about an hour, he stopped the Imperial Sword technique and landed. While recovering his sword energy and spiritual sense, he ran on the ground. After a while, the silhouette of a city wall appeared in front of them. It was a town. After more than a month of high-intensity training, he was intercepted by the sword of Gojoseon right after he finished his training. After a fierce battle of life and death, he finally killed the sword of Gojoseon. The process was hair-raising. Tianshan Town. It was a 10-meter-tall stone tablet with 3 large words written on it. Within the West Tiger territory there was only one city, West Tiger City. However, there were many towns. Entering Tianshan Town, the pedestrians came and went. Almost all of them carried swords or carried swords on their back. Even those who were empty-handed exuded a sharp aura. Walking in the crowd, Chumu restrained his aura and his brilliance, becoming less outstanding. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and looked at a wooden tablet beside him. Written on it were 5 large vermilion words. Alchemist Alliance. Alchemist Alliance. Chumu muttered under his breath, as if he had thought of something. He turned around and walked into the Alchemist Alliance. After entering the Alchemist Alliance, Chumu asked a female attendant to understand the situation. The Alchemist Alliance, as the name suggests, is an exclusive organization for alchemists. It is an organization for alchemists to gather and exchange information. At the same time, it also provides protection for alchemists. The Alchemist Alliance's influence is enormous. This does not mean that they are powerful, but the area they cover is very wide. The Alchemist Alliance exists in most of the human territories. Chumu immediately thought of something. The Alchemist Alliance's information should be very powerful because it covers most of the human territories. At the same time, the Alchemist Alliance has a large amount of medicinal herbs stored. All kinds of precious medicinal herbs can be found in the Alchemist Alliance's medicine warehouse. However, if one wants to obtain medicinal herbs from the Alchemist Alliance, one must meet certain conditions. The first condition is that one must be an alchemist certified by the Alchemist Alliance. The second condition is that one must have contribution points from the Alchemist Alliance and use contribution points to exchange for medicinal herbs. The first condition is that as long as one has mastered alchemy, one can apply for the assessment. The second condition is that one must make some contributions to the Alchemist Alliance or take an advancement test in order to obtain the corresponding contribution points. I want to apply for the Alchemist assessment, Chumu said. May I ask which level of Alchemist assessment you want to apply for? The female attendant's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and she immediately asked. Chumu pondered for a moment before replying, Alchemist. Okay, alchemist. Alchemist. At first, the female attendant calmly repeated it. Soon after, her brain reacted. Her pair of beautiful eyes widened and her slender hand covered her mouth. Her face was full of shock. After 10 breaths, she realized that her gesture was very rude. She immediately apologized to Chu Mu. However, she was still very shocked and doubtful. Are you sure you want to apply for the Alchemist Grandmaster Certification Assessment? Yes. Chu Mu didn't show the slightest impatience as he nodded and replied indifferently. The female attendant didn't know whether Chu Mu was arrogant or he really had the ability. After all, he looked very young. After thinking for a moment, the female attendant immediately said to Chu Mu, "Then please take a seat inside and wait for a moment. I will submit your application." Chu Mu nodded. He walked into a room and sat down. The room was decorated in a simple manner, but the decorator had put a lot of effort into it. It made people feel comfortable and had a calming scent that made people feel calm just by smelling it. About a moment later, there was a burst of loud shouting coming from outside. Soon after, the door was opened and a tall and sturdy figure appeared, blocking the door. A pair of tiger eyes were bright and full of expression, shooting out a sharp light that swept across the room before finally landing on Chu Mu. Who was it that said he wanted to apply for the Alchemy Grandmaster Certification Test? The bearded old man with a red complexion shouted. "It's me." Chu Mu stood up and replied indifferently. "It's really you?" The bearded old man's eyes widened, making his already big eyes seem even bigger, making his rough face even scarier. "Peak spirit condensation realm cultivation, and looking at your bone age, you're no more than 45 years old. Boy, the Alchemist Union isn't a place to joke around. Don't think you can call yourself an alchemist just because you've learned a few alchemy techniques. Whether I am or not, won't we know after the exam?" Chu Mu smiled faintly. Facing the other party's aura, he wasn't afraid at all, even if the other party was a king realm master. "Oh, you can still talk freely in front of this old man's aura. Not bad. Fine, this old man will give you a chance." The bearded old man was surprised at first. He looked at Chu Mu a few more times, then scratched his beard and said, "How about this, you refine a batch of pills first. Let this old man take a look, then I'll decide if you want to take the Alchemy Grandmaster Certification exam." Okay. Chu Mu nodded. He also knew that with his age, it was hard to believe that he had the attainments of an alchemy grandmaster. After all, it wasn't easy to become an alchemist. It required enough talent, enough practice, and a lot of resources. Normal families wouldn't be able to nurture him. "Follow this old man," the red-faced old man said, then turned around and walked out. Chu Mu followed him out and followed the red-faced old man to an alchemy room. "What kind of pill are you planning to refine? I'll prepare the ingredients for you," the old man asked. "Vitality pill." Chu Mu thought for a while and said, "Vitality pill." The red-faced old man was startled and looked at Chu Mu in surprise. "Are you sure? The vitality pill is a 10th grade pill. Although it's far from an earth grade pill, it's still not that easy to refine." "I'm sure," Chu Mu said. "Okay, I'll prepare the ingredients for you now. Let's see how you'll refine the vitality pill," the red-faced old man said while preparing the ingredients for Chu Mu. After Chu Mu took the ingredients, he glanced at them and knew that the red-faced old man's attainments in alchemy weren't low because the amount of ingredients was very precise. After the old man handed the ingredients to Chu Mu, he turned around and walked out of the alchemy room. He said, "I'll wait for you outside. If you can't do it, say it early." Chu Mu smiled and thought that this old man was interesting. He was very straightforward, but he didn't have any malicious intentions. He also knew how to behave and didn't force him to stay in the alchemy room. He calmed down and began to extract the essence of the ingredient. To Chu Mu, whose basic pill concocting techniques had already become second nature and who had cultivated the Grandmaster level Heavenly Sun 9 transformations, extracting the 10th rank pill's medicinal essence couldn't be easier. Not long after, The various medicinal ingredients were all purified into medicinal essence. Every medicinal ingredient's essence reached 99% purity. If Chumu was willing, he could use the earth core desolate flame to refine it to 100% wouldn't be a problem. However, there was no need for that. He began to refine the vitality pill. The vitality pill was a kind of external medicinal pill that could be used to treat external injuries. Its effect was very obvious. Among the level 10 medicinal pills, it could be considered as one of the top ones. If one wanted to refine the vitality pill, one would need to be an alchemy grandmaster. This was also something that the red-faced old man was surprised about. With Chumu's age, if he really had the attainments of an alchemy grandmaster, it could only mean one thing. Chumu's talent in alchemy was very outstanding and could be considered an alchemy genius. However, the possibility was very small. It wasn't easy to become an alchemy genius. While the red-faced old man was thinking, Chumu had already opened the furnace to refine the vitality pill. According to the order, the various medicinal essences needed to refine the vitality pill were thrown into the furnace one by one. The order and interval of each medicinal essence was strictly regulated. The slightest deviation would result in the quality of the pill. If one was unlucky, it might even fail. In terms of timing and control, Chumu had his own uniqueness. He had already reached the alchemy grandmaster level. Using him to refine the vitality pill was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. However, he didn't relax because the vitality pill was only a 10th grade pill. Instead, he focused wholeheartedly on refining. This was a quality that an outstanding alchemist must have. A truly outstanding alchemist must have a dedicated spirit. Even if it was an alchemy grandmaster refining a 1st grade pill, they would treat it with care. Of course, under normal circumstances, an alchemy grandmaster wouldn't refine a 1st grade pill. Chapter 972. Time slowly passed. In the alchemy room, the alchemy furnace was being roasted by flames. Chumu stood in front of the alchemy furnace. His hands moved like the rising sun, emitting strands of golden red light. Gradually, the light grew stronger and stronger. The temperature in the alchemy furnace also grew higher and higher. It turned into a blazing sun, wantonly emitting scorching heat as if it wanted to melt everything. Finally, Chumu's hands moved again and gradually sank. The light became more and more restrained, gradually turning dark red, like the setting sun. After the 9 changes of the heavenly sun was completed, the pills in the alchemy furnace were formed. Chumu slapped the sides of the alchemy furnace and the lid flew up. Pills shot out from the furnace and were all caught by his spiritual sense. The lid fell and the flames were extinguished at the same time. Chumu put the 10 vitality pills into a jade bottle and walked to the alchemy room's door with the jade bottle. After opening the alchemy room's door, the red-faced old man immediately turned around. His gaze fell on the jade bottle in Chumu's hand. Finished refining? Chumu nodded and handed the jade bottle to the old man. The old man immediately opened the bottle and poured out 3 life force pills. He took a look. There is still a fiery aura. These are indeed freshly refined pills. The old man nodded. With his alchemy skills as a great grandmaster, he could tell at a glance whether a pill was freshly refined or not. There was no way it could be fake. The jade-green vitality pills were smooth and round, sparkling and translucent. There was no medicinal fragrance coming from them. The old man stared at them with wide eyes. Then, his eyes gradually narrowed until they were completely focused on one of the pills. He looked at it and sniffed it. After repeating this a few times, his expression became more and more surprised. The color is as smooth as a flawless gem, and the medicinal fragrance is restrained. The red-faced old man nodded to himself. He muttered in surprise, "This is clearly a manifestation of quality that is infinitely close to perfection. You can actually refine perfect quality pills." The red-faced old man was incomparably shocked. He sized up Chu Mu with an expression of disbelief. After a while, the old man's expression returned to normal. However, he was still somewhat surprised. It seems that your alchemy skills are very high and your foundation is very solid. It can be seen that you have put in a lot of hard work. The red-faced old man said, just with this cauldron of vitality pills, you can pass the Alliance's Alchemy Grandmaster examination. Are you sure you want to take the Alchemy Grandmaster certification examination? Chu Mu nodded. Fine. The red-faced old man paid much more attention to Chu Mu, although there is only one word difference between Alchemy Grandmaster and Alchemy Great Grandmaster. The difference in alchemy is enormous. Some alchemists are unable to break through to Great Grandmaster in their entire life. As he spoke, the old man brought Chu Mu to the Alchemy Grandmaster examination area. The old man's is an old man's is old. The test's content is to concoct an earth rank pill. As for what kind of earth rank pill you concoct, that will depend on your luck. The red-faced old man said to Chu Mu because this time, Chu Mu had to pick a pill recipe himself. There were 10 pill recipes in total. He couldn't use his divine sense to explore them. They were chosen randomly. Chu Mu didn't hesitate. He casually selected a pill recipe and glanced at it. He knew what pill he had to refine. Vitality pill. This is an earth-level pill that recovers divine sense. Among the earth-level pills, it belongs to the lower level. A low-level alchemy grandmaster can refine it, but the success rate is not high. The 3 examiners glanced at the pill recipe and the red-faced old man said, the vitality pill can also restore divine sense for ordinary king realm experts. Only those who have reached mid-level alchemy grandmaster can refine it freely. It is very difficult for ordinary low-level alchemy grandmasters to use it for the examination. How about this? You can draw again. One of the black-faced old men said to Chu Mu. The black-faced old man loved talent because he also saw Chu Mu's vitality pill. After seeing Chu Mu himself, he felt that Chu Mu was an alchemy genius and worth cultivating. He didn't want him to suffer setbacks. Thank you, Elder, but since I have already chosen, I will refine the vitality pill. Chu Mu said. He didn't say anything big. These 3 people were all alchemy grandmasters and elders of the Alchemist Alliance. Since that's the case, then you can start refining. We will watch here and give you an assessment. The 3rd elder was a goateed old man. Chu Mu nodded and chose the herbs first. Refining the vitality pill was just a private assessment by the red-faced elder Dai to determine whether Chu Mu was qualified to apply for the Alchemy Grandmaster assessment. Therefore, Chu Mu didn't need to choose the herbs himself. Now the assessment was a formal assessment. Choosing the herbs was also part of the assessment. Because an excellent alchemist must personally prepare the herbs, the dosage of the herbs, the placement of the herbs, and so on. Everything must be handled personally to avoid unnecessary subtle mistakes that affect the alchemy. There were many herbs here and they were distributed on the shelves on the walls around. Chu Mu began to choose. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, among the many complex herbs, Chu Mu quickly picked out the various herbs needed to refine the vitality pill. A total of 23 kinds were needed. The 3 elders had been staring at Chu Mu's movements. Quick, no hesitation, experienced technique, and good knowledge of herbs. The black-faced elderly nodded and said in a voice that only the 3 of them could hear. Chu Mu was not affected at all and took out one kind of herb after another. Because he could only take the amount needed to refine a furnace of vitality pill, the amount of herbs taken must be accurate. Not bad, the amount of each herb is exactly the same. Even if this old man took it, it would only be so. The red-faced elder Dai stroked his beard and smiled. Among the 3 elders, Elder Dai was the most accurate in taking out the herbs. In the process of taking out the herbs, Chu Mu has passed. Very excellent. The 3rd goateed elder Yang smiled. Let's see how he extracts the essence of the herbs. The 23 kinds of pills were placed in order, and the temperature was controlled by the fire. After heating the furnace, the temperature was adjusted again, and then he began to extract the essence of the herbs. No matter if it was starting a fire, heating the furnace, or adjusting the flame's size and temperature afterwards, Chu Mu did it very skillfully. There wasn't the slightest bit of unfamiliarity, causing the 3 elders to silently nod their heads. Just from this point alone, one could see that Chu Mu's fundamentals were very solid and stable, surpassing many alchemists. The technique Chu Mu used was the 9 Heavenly Sun transformation, a Grandmaster level technique. In the eyes of the 3 elders, they were only a little surprised, but thinking that Chu Mu had applied for the Alchemy Grandmaster assessment, it was not a big deal to know a Grandmaster level technique. They could also tell that Chu Mu still hadn't completely grasped that technique. After the essence of the 23 kinds of herbs was extracted, Chu Mu took a breath and began to refine the spirit-enhancing pill. The temperature of the flame was adjusted to the highest, and at the moment when the temperature of the pill furnace reached the hottest, he put in the first kind of herb essence, and then began to control the size and temperature of the flame. After 3 breaths, he put in the second kind of herb essence. The 3 elders all stared with wide eyes. They did not dare to use the power of their spiritual sense, for fear of affecting Chu Mu. Good, very good, the order of each kind of herb essence is correct, and the time interval of each kind of herb essence is consistent with the requirements of the pill recipe. Elder Yang's tone was a little excited. Every pill recipe that had been handed down had been verified countless times. The amount of herbs and the order and interval of putting them in had all reached the most accurate level. Even so, not every alchemist could be as accurate as what was recorded in the pill recipe. Even if there were slight discrepancies, under normal circumstances, it would not lead to failure. At most, the quality of the pills would be affected when they were formed. However, this was something that couldn't be helped. The majority of alchemists weren't able to grasp timing and time intervals to such a fine degree. Those who were able to do so were usually true geniuses. Clearly, Chu Mu was one of them. After all the herb essences were put in and the lid was closed, Chu Mu began to use the Heavenly Sun's 9 transformations to refine. His aura was steady as his hands transformed into a rising sun. As it rose, the temperature gradually increased, and the flame under the pill furnace also changed. With a change of technique, it became a scorching sun at noon. The temperature of the pill furnace was also raised to the highest. Chu Mu's spiritual sense also entered the pill furnace to assist in the fusion of the herb essences. This process lasted for half an hour and consumed a lot of his divine thought power. Fortunately, Chu Mu's spiritual sense was very tyrannical. This kind of consumption did not affect his state. After half an hour, his hands changed again and slowly sank to the side. This was the 3rd transformation, the setting sun. At this point, it meant that the refining of the spirit-generating pill had reached the final juncture. The flame in the pill furnace changed again. The temperature gradually decreased, a little bit by a very uniform decrease. The herb essences in the pill furnace had also completely melted. With the help of Chu Mu's spiritual sense, they began to condense into pills. After about a quarter of an hour, the herb essences in the pill furnace had fused and turned into pills, lying quietly at the bottom of the pill furnace. This was not completely over. At this step, there was still the last step, which was to use the residual heat of the pill furnace to roast the newly formed pills, completely forming them and stabilizing them. During this process, the last step was to remove the remaining impurities on the surface. Every step and every link in alchemy was very important. Chu Mu treated all of them with all his heart. He did not relax because of which step was relatively simple. At the final moment of pill formation, Chu Mu still did not relax because he still had to collect the pills. Collecting the pills was also a step in alchemy and also the last step. If it was not done well, it was very likely that the pills would be damaged and all the previous efforts would be wasted. It would be too late to cry. The three elders' eyes widened again. Chapter 973. It's done, let's take a look. Elder Dai's temper was the most impatient. As soon as he saw Chu Mu put the pill into the jade bottle, he quickly got up and strode over. Chu Mu also handed the jade bottle to Elder Dai. In a flash, Elder Dai returned to his original position and uncorked the bottle. The other two elders also quickly came over. Pouring out 3 pills, the color of the pill was grayish-black with a silver pattern, looking like a gem. Elder Li and Elder Yang moved quickly. They each picked up a pill from Elder Dai's palm. First, they brought it close to their noses and sniffed it hard to distinguish the fragrance of the pill. Nodding slightly, they focused their eyes and carefully observed it from every angle. The power of their divine sense also wrapped the pill from every angle. The color and fragrance of cooking, and the pill was also particular about color and fragrance. This color and fragrance was not deliberate, but the quality of the pill was good. The color and fragrance were naturally not bad, and it was also a reflection of the alchemy level of an alchemist. The fragrance of various herbs blends into one, forming the unique pill fragrance of the pill. The taste is pure and there is no mixing. Elder Li nodded and gave a pertinent evaluation. The pill is full, the color is bright, the texture is well proportioned, and the quality is excellent. Elder Yang also nodded and evaluated. The selection of herbs is very precise, and every time to put in the essence of the herbs is also very precise. From the beginning to the end, it shows an incomparably solid basic skill. As he spoke, Elder Dai threw the pill in his hand into his mouth and swallowed it. He closed his eyes and carefully felt the effect of the pill after it dissolved. After a while, he opened his eyes. Yes, the quality of this pill has reached the peak of excellent. One more step and it can reach flawless quality. The amount of herbs is theoretically the standard amount for refining 10 pills. The final number of pills is 7, and the quality is all excellent. There are no mistakes in the alchemy process, and the basic skills are very solid. Elder Li said, looking at Chu Mu with a smile on his face, middle-level alchemy grandmaster. Indeed, it is very difficult for a low-level alchemy grandmaster to do so. Middle-level alchemy grandmaster. Elder Yang also agreed. I also agree. Mid-tier alchemy grandmaster, Elder Dai finally said. The 3 elders were all high-stage alchemy grandmasters. On the path of alchemy, they had been immersed in alchemy for over 100 years. Their foundations were solid, their attainments were profound, and they were experienced and knowledgeable. They were authoritative representatives. Since they all agreed that Chu Mu had middle-stage alchemy grandmaster attainments, it meant that Chu Mu truly did have middle-stage alchemy grandmaster attainment. Chu Mu, you are not yet 50 years old, right? Elder Li looked at Chu Mu and asked. Chu Mu nodded. He was indeed not yet 50 years old. All right. Elder Li clapped his hands and shouted, looking very excited. As far as I know, in the history of alchemists, there has never been a 50-year-old mid-tier alchemy grandmaster. You are the first. I am sure that Chu Mu must be the youngest alchemy grandmaster in the primeval age. Elder Yang stroked his goatee and said with a smile, as long as you focus on alchemy, you might be able to break through to the grandmaster level and become a saint master before you are 100 years old. Elder Dai looked at Chu Mu with eyes full of hope. Alchemy saint masters had a higher status than ordinary saint-level experts. There were very few alchemy saint masters in the primeval age. It was very difficult to become one. For example, Elder Dai and the other 2 knew that no matter how hard they worked, it was impossible for them to break through and become a saint master. At most, they would become a top-level alchemy grandmaster. After the 3 elders were excited, they finally calmed down. However, their eyes were still full of amazement when they looked at Chu Mu. This made Chu Mu feel quite helpless. Wait, Chu Mu. Chu Mu. I think I've heard this name before. Now that I think about it, it's a bit familiar. Suddenly, Elderly, who was in the middle of a conversation, let out a low cry. Now that you mention it, I also have the same feeling. I think I've heard the name Chumu before. Elder Yang also had a thoughtful expression. Elder Dai thought for a moment and also revealed a similar expression. I know. Elder Li suddenly clapped his hands together. His eyes shined with an incomparably sharp light as they fell on Chumu. You are Chumu, the number 1 disciple on the Good Fortune Heavenly Tablet, Chumu? If there isn't a second person called Chumu who has entered the Good Fortune mystic realm, then it should be me. Chumu faintly smiled. It's you. The 3 elders' eyes were wide open, as if they were popping out of their sockets. What kind of monstrous genius are you? Elder Dai couldn't help but roar. Indeed, to them, Chumu was a monstrous genius. He wasn't even 50 years old, and he already had the attainments of a mid-level alchemy great grandmaster. This already shocked them. Now that they knew that Chumu was the number 1 disciple on the Good Fortune Heavenly Tablet, they were even more shocked. I originally planned to advise you to focus on alchemy and cultivate as a supplement, but now it seems. Elder Dai sighed. Elder Li and Elder Yang also had the same idea. But now that they knew that Chumu was so outstanding in cultivation, they really couldn't bring themselves to say it. Many thanks for the 3 elders' concern, but I have my own plans. Chumu said. Fine, you can evaluate it yourself. Elder Dai sighed. Let's calculate the contribution points Chumu will receive. Elder Li changed the topic. After becoming an alchemy apprentice, you won't be able to receive alliance contribution points. But after passing the Alchemy Master Assessment, according to the level of Alchemy Master, you can receive 10, 20, and 40 alliance contribution points. Elder Yang calculated, after passing the Alchemy Master Assessment, you can receive 100, 200, and 400 alliance contribution points. After passing the Alchemy Grandmaster Assessment, you can receive 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000 alliance contribution points. After passing the Alchemy Great Grandmaster Assessment, you can receive 10,000 alliance contribution points. After becoming a mid-level Alchemy Grandmaster, you can receive another 20,000 alliance contribution points. Elder Yang concluded, after calculating it this way, Chumu, you can receive 37,770 alliance contribution points. After that, these contribution points will be placed in your Alchemy Master token. 3 elders, I wonder if our Alchemy Master Alliance's medicine storehouse has a type of spiritual medicine called Earthroot? Chumu asked. I plan to exchange for one. Earthroot, let me think. Elder Li pondered. Earthroot is a medicinal herb with only one use. Its value isn't very high. Elder Dai said. Since the 3 elders have heard of me, I wonder if you have heard that my cultivation talent is only at the low level of the 5th grade. Chumu said. The elders immediately nodded their heads. In the past, I had a fortuitous encounter and obtained a pill formula. There are a few medicinal herbs in the formula, and the earthroot is one of them. Using the earthroot as a medicinal herb, could it be that the pill formula is? Elder Li, who was deep in thought, widened his eyes. This pill is called the Great Amplification Pill. It can raise one's cultivation talent from the 5th grade to the 4th grade. Chumu didn't avoid the topic. This was because pills that could raise one's cultivation talent were incomparably precious and rare. But the problem was that it could only raise one's cultivation talent from the 5th grade to the 4th grade. In the ancient immemorial world, the cultivation talent of the disciples of the major powers wouldn't be lower than the 4th grade. For those clans with deep foundations, their descendants would inherit excellent genes and their cultivation talent wouldn't be low. Therefore, the Great Amplification Pill that could only raise one's cultivation talent from the 5th grade to the 4th grade was of little value to many people. I've already collected the other medicinal herbs. Only the earthroot is left. As long as I gather all the medicinal herbs, I can start refining the great amplification pill and raise my cultivation talent. Chumu said. I see. Elderly nodded his head. I have some recollection. A few decades ago, there seemed to be a piece of earthroot that was stored in the pharmaceutical storehouse. I'll go look for it now. Elderly immediately set off after saying that. Not long after, Elderly reappeared with a grayish-brown root in his hand. It exuded a faint aura and had a slight smell of earth. This was the earth root. This earth root has been stored in the pharmaceutical storehouse for a few decades and no one has exchanged it for it. Because it has only one use and there are many restrictions, its value isn't high. However, it's very useful to you. Take it as a meeting gift for becoming a mid-level alchemist grandmaster. Elderly said as he handed the earth root to Chumu. Chumu accepted the earth root without hesitation. Elderly then took out a golden token and handed it to Chumu. Chumu took a look at it. On the golden token, there was a large alchemist character, indicating that it was an alchemist token. On the back, there were 2 red flames, indicating that it was a mid-level alchemist grandmaster. Chumu took out a bit of blood essence and imprinted it with his divine sense. His identity verification was complete. Even if someone obtained his alchemist token, they wouldn't be able to replace it. Putting away the alchemist token, he took out a pen and paper and started writing. Then, he handed it to the 3 elders. This is a pill recipe. The Great Amplification Pill's pill recipe. The 3 elders exclaimed in unison. Pill recipes were often very precious, especially those rare and valuable ones. They were even more difficult to come by. There were very few pills that could increase one's cultivation talent. Although they were only 5th grade to 4th grade pills, their value was extremely high. Alchemists generally wouldn't hand over their pill recipes to others. Chumu's actions immediately made the 3 elders excited. At the same time, their opinion of Chumu rose, and their attitudes became much better. Elders, I'm not confident that I can refine the Great Amplification Pill by myself, so I'd like to invite the 3 of you to help me refine it, Chumu said, revealing his intentions. The Great Amplification Pill was a very high-grade earth-grade pill. With Chumu's current alchemy skills, it would be very difficult to refine it. Moreover, he only had 1 set of ingredient. If he failed, the chances were slim. If he had the skills of a high-level alchemist grandmaster, Chumu would refine it by himself. However, he was only a mid-level alchemist grandmaster, so he didn't have much confidence. All right, then let us refine a cauldron of pills that can increase one's cultivation talent. The 3 elders first looked at each other, then nodded in unison. They were very willing. Many thanks, elders. Chumu also smiled. Chapter 974. Once everything was ready, the 4 alchemy grandmasters gathered in the alchemy room, preparing to refine the Great Amplification Pill. There was only 1 chance, so they had to be cautious and strive for success on the first try. First, they studied the pill recipe and imagined the various steps, then assigned tasks to the 4 of them. In order to refine the Great Amplification Pill, they even cooperated to refine 3 batches of earth-grade pills to familiarize themselves with each other. Now everything was ready. Chumu took out the 6 herbs needed to refine the Great Amplification Pill. 3 elders, why don't you leave the extraction of the herbs to me? Chumu said. He had the earth core desolate flame, which could greatly assist in extracting the essence of the herbs. All right. The 3 elders had no objections. Chumu started first, heating up the furnace, then began extracting the essence of the herbs. He used the earth core desolate flame. Although the earth core desolate flame was precious, the 3 elders were not moved. This was also because of Chumu's trust in them. Under the high temperature of the earth core desolate flame, the herbs were extracted one by one, turning into the essence of the herbs. It actually reached 99% purity, which surprised the 3 elders. If Chumu's extraction technique was improved, he might be able to extract 100% of the herb's essence. However, a 99% purity was already enough. It greatly exceeded the three elders' expectations. In fact, when they were asked to extract it, it was only 90%. The 6 herbs' essences were all extracted. The second step was to refine the pill. This step required everyone's cooperation. Each of them was fully focused, raising their concentration to 120%, not daring to relax in the slightest. 3 elders, let's begin. After finishing the preparations, Chu Mu said in a low voice. The 3 elders nodded and began to heat up the furnace. When 3 high-level alchemy grandmasters and 1 mid-level alchemy grandmaster worked together to refine a pill, especially when the 4 of them were fully prepared and went all out, as long as there were no disturbances or accidents, it was a matter of course that the refinement would be completed. The 4 of them cooperated very well after a few rounds of practice. Each step was orderly and the timing was very accurate. Collect the pills. Elder Yang's eyes shone brightly as his hands formed a seal in the air. Red light shot out in all directions, bombarding the alchemy furnace. The lid flew up, and 1 pill after another shot out through the air. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, all the pills were immediately sucked into the open jade bottle. At this point, the 4 of them finally heaved a sigh of relief. The refinement was finally completed. They looked at each other and smiled. Let's take a look at our results, Elderly said. The others also couldn't wait to take a look. All right. Elder Yang uncorked the bottle. Immediately, an indescribable fragrance wafted out. Every medicinal pill had a different fragrance. There were so many that it was impossible to describe them clearly. Just by smelling it, everyone immediately felt refreshed and their blood vessels unobstructed. It was very comfortable. When he poured it out, there was a total of 5 medicinal pellets. In other words, a set of medicinal ingredients that could be used to refine 10 great amplification pellets were only used to refine 5 of them. However, the quality of those 5 pellets had all reached the flawless level. Flawless great amplification pellet. Although there are only 5 of them, all of them have reached the flawless level. It's not bad, Elder Yang said as he put the 5 great amplification pellets back into the jade bottle and handed it to Chu Mu. After Chu Mu received it, he poured out 3 pellets and handed them to the 3 elders. Many thanks for the 3 elders' help. These 3 great amplification pellets can be considered as Chu Mu's gift to the 3 elders. The 3 elders were stunned for a moment, then each received a pellet and put it away. They could keep it as a collection. Who knew when it would come in handy, although the chances were slim. Chu Mu put away the other 2 great amplification pellet. He only needed to consume one of them, while the other was stored away for now. Over the next few days, Chu Mu stayed in the Alchemist Alliance, chatting with the 3 elders, exchanging their knowledge and experience in alchemy. The 3 elders were also interested in cultivating Chu Mu, the youngest alchemy grandmaster, and were not stingy with their own experiences, passing them on to him one by one. Chu Mu's memory was amazing. He could remember everything the 3 elders said, and his perception was even more monstrous. During the exchange, he constantly absorbed the information, turning it into his own. Then, he drew inferences about other things, allowing the 3 elders to gain some benefits, further improving their alchemy theories. Now they only needed to personally try it out and turn their theories into practice. Many thanks to the 3 elders for teaching me these past few days. I have gained a lot. Chu Mu saluted the 3 elders with his sword. Our gains are also not small. Elderly smiled. Chu Mu, do you plan to take the great amplification pellet now, or save it for later? Elder Dai asked. I'll take it later, after I've accumulated enough to prepare for my breakthrough. Chu Mu replied. I still recommend you to take it now. Elder Yang said, cultivation talent is often innate. Taking a pill to improve it is going against the heavens and changing one's fate. It will take some time for the body to gradually adapt. Cultivation talent had always been a very mysterious and unpredictable thing, and it was very difficult to explain clearly. It was also difficult to distinguish whether Elder Yang's words were true or false, but after thinking about it carefully, there was more or less a possibility. Chumu thought for a moment. Originally, he planned to wait until he was about to break through to the manifestation realm before taking the great amplification pellet. If he took it now, there wouldn't be much of a difference. It was better to believe it than not, so it was fine. Then I'll take it now. Chumu thought for a moment and felt that Elder Yang's words were reasonable. There is a secret room here, you can go in and take the pill, Elder Li said, and immediately arranged a secret room for Chumu. Chumu walked into the secret room, and after the door closed, he first adjusted his breathing for a while, then took out a great amplification pellet and threw it into his mouth. He swallowed it, and it flowed down his throat into his stomach, dissolving the medicinal power of the pill. A strange aura that seemed to be as hot as magma, but also as cold as ice was immediately released from the pill. It circled in Chumu's stomach, and spread out in circles. The only use of the great amplification pellet was to increase one's cultivation talent. When the medicinal power of the great amplification pellet was released, it first turned into a stream that circled in his stomach, and then spread to every part of his body. Then, Chumu felt as if his body was fixed in place. Immediately after, he felt the medicinal power of the great amplification pellet continuously seeping into the depths of his body. He couldn't feel it, but it was as if there were hidden existences in every part of his body. A numb feeling emerged from the depths of his body, as if electricity was flowing through his bones, muscles, and meridians. Chumu had an indescribable feeling, as if millions of ants were gnawing on him. It was indescribably strange and uncomfortable. He wanted to scratch an itch, but he didn't know where to start. It also felt like his entire body was itching. What a pity! Elder Li shook his head and sighed. Yes, it really is a pity. Elder Dai and Elder Yang were very familiar with Elder Li, so when they heard his sigh, they knew what he was lamenting about. If Chumu can focus on alchemy, I believe that in less than 50 years, he will definitely become a Saint Master of the Pill Tao. He will be the youngest Saint Master recorded in the Archaic era. Elder Li's voice was full of admiration. If it was only our speculation before, then after these few days of communication, I can confirm that Chumu's attainments in alchemy far surpass ours. If he focuses on alchemy for 50 years, it is absolutely possible for him to become a Saint Master of the Pill Tao, Elder Dai said solemnly. There is no other way. His talent in cultivation is in no way inferior to his talent in alchemy. Elder Yang said, although his cultivation talent is only at the 5th grade, and after taking the Great Development Pill, he will only be at the 4th grade. But I believe that Chumu's destiny is not low. In the future, it is not impossible for him to become a king or a saint. The number 1 disciple on the Good Fortune Heavenly Tablet has perceived the mysteries of good fortune even faster than Thousand Mountains Daolis 100 years ago. Even the true Dragon Dynasty's crown prince, Long Zun, who possesses the early 9th Revolution sword intent, cannot compare with him. I really have no idea what sort of place could give birth to such a peerless, monstrous genius. The 3 elders stood outside the chamber, chatting with each other. At the same time, they were also guarding Chumu to prevent any accidents from occurring. Within the chamber, Chumu was in a very strange state. The power of his divine sense was completely useless. His entire body felt muddle-headed. His entire body was numb and itchy, and he couldn't help but gently shiver. His cultivation talent was changing from the deepest depths, slowly being transformed by the Great Development Pill. As time passed and the transformation gradually came to an end, Chumu felt as if his soul was about to leave its scabbard. The numb and itchy feeling disappeared little by little. His entire body felt light, as if he were about to fly. After a long time, Chumu regained his composure. He realized that the medicinal efficacy of the Great Development Pill had been completely consumed. His cultivation talent had indeed risen. He didn't test himself, but he could feel his body become much more relaxed. It was as if he had been carrying a heavy burden on his back, but now that burden had been lifted, he felt indescribably relaxed. This was the feeling of being reborn. In the past, when my cultivation talent rose, this feeling wasn't as intense as this. Chumu thought. His entire body felt relaxed and filled with strength, a formidable strength. He knew that this was a feeling, or perhaps it could be called an illusion. This was because his cultivation talent had broken through its shackles and reached an even higher level. This sort of feeling of surpassing one's limits was extremely wonderful. After carefully examining himself, Chumu was stunned to discover that his divine sense, which had already reached its limit, had actually increased a little because of his cultivation talent. Although it was less than 10%, this still left Chumu overjoyed. Then, Chumu discovered that his infinite desolate sword essence could continue to be tempered, becoming purer and more formidable. Chapter 975. How does it feel to have your cultivation talent improved? Elder Yang asked as soon as Chumu came out. He was very interested in cultivation talent. Very good, very wonderful. Chumu smiled. Come, tell me in detail what it feels like. Elder Yang's eyes brightened and he quickly pulled Chumu to the side. Chumu had no choice but to describe his feelings in detail. He repeated it 3 times before Elder Yang was willing to let him go. 3 elders, thank you for helping me refine the Great Amplification Pill. It allowed my cultivation talent to improve. Chumu said, It's time for me to say goodbye. Wait, if there's nothing urgent, why don't you stay for another day? We've been discussing alchemy for the past few days. We haven't had a good drink, said the bearded Elder Dai. Elder Dai's favorite is the Tao of alchemy. His second favorite is the thing in the cup. The pill wine he personally brewed is incomparably delicious. Elder Li revealed an expression of reminiscence. Chumu had always been very interested in tasting fine wine, so he naturally didn't refuse. The pill wine personally brewed by Elder Dai was different from ordinary wine. It was brewed using medicinal pills. This was the first time Chumu had tasted this kind of wine. The taste was indeed different from the wine he had tasted in the past. This pill wine had the fragrance of wine and also the fragrance of pills. When the two fused together, they formed a unique fragrance. And in this fragrance, if one tasted it carefully, they could distinguish between the fragrance of the wine and pills. It was very unique and had a rich aftertaste. Can you tell how many kinds of medicinal pills are in here? Elder Dai asked proudly. Vitality pill. Great revitalizing pill. Blood chi pill. Chumu tasted it again. He didn't directly swallow it. Instead, he used the tip of his tongue to slowly savor it. From the fragrance of the medicinal pills, he could gradually distinguish them. Chumu named 10 medicinal pills. Not bad, you're right. Elder Dai smiled and said, I named this elixir wine the 10 elixir wine of chi and blood. In addition to being delicious, it also has another effect, which is to heal internal and external injuries and restore chi and blood. Because it is made from the fusion of 10 elixirs, the effect is faster and better than taking the 10 elixirs individually. Elder Dai said with a smile, looking a little proud. He was beaming with joy and his beard was curling up and down. Other than the Returning Sun 10 elixir wine, I also have the Xianyuan 10 elixir wine, which is specially used to restore sword energy. Not only the 10 elixir wine, you also have the 100 elixir wine. Quickly take it out. Elder Yang urged. Speaking of the 100 pills wine, a pained expression flashed across Elder Dai's face. Elder Dai's 100 elixir wine is brewed from 10 different kinds of earth-level elixirs and 90 kinds of human-level elixirs. Its value is over 1,000 times that of the 10 elixir wine. It is extremely precious, Elder Li said. Elder Dai's heart ached for a moment, but he still took out a palm-sized wine jug. Inside it was the 100 pills wine. Come, come, come. Let's see what's the difference between it and the 10 elixir wine. Elder Dai poured a small cup for everyone and immediately put away the wine jug. This 100 pills wine is called the Returning Sun 100 pills wine. Its effect is to heal internal and external injuries and restore blood energy. Its effect is over 100 times that of the Blood Qi 10 elixir wine. It can even have an obvious effect on king-level experts. The taste of the Returning Sun 100 pills wine was several times richer than the Blood Qi 10 elixir wine. The wine also seemed to be more viscous than the Blood Qi 10 elixir wine. Without a doubt, not only was its value higher and its effect better, the taste was also much better. According to Elder Dai, the reason why it was called the Returning Sun 100 pills wine was because this wine had a great effect on internal and external injuries and blood energy recovery. It also had a certain effect on people who were seriously injured and on the verge of death. It could alleviate their injuries and preserve their life force. In addition to the Returning Sun 100 pills wine, there was also another type of 100 pills wine called the Refining 100 pills wine. The Refining 100 pills wine was an advanced version of the Blood Qi 10 elixir wine. It was on the same level as the Returning Sun 100 pills wine. According to Elder Dai, drinking a mouthful of the Refining 100 pills wine could restore all the sword energy of an ordinary Ichino sword of Gojoseon. This pill wine could only be tasted. It couldn't be drunk like other wines. First, there were no benefits and it would be a waste. Second, its value was too high and it wasn't easy to brew. Finally, Elder Dai took out a jug of the Returning Sun 100 pills wine and a jug of the Refining 100 pills wine and gave it to Chu Mu. This was completely out of Chu Mu's expectations. Chu Mu accepted Elder Dai's kindness and accepted the 2 jugs of wine. The amount wasn't much. Each jug could only be drunk about 10 mouthfuls, which was 10 times. The value was indeed very high. Chu Mu thought that he could only use it in the most critical 10 times, which was a moment of life and death. After arranging a room for Chu Mu and resting for a while, Chu Mu got up and left the room, preparing to leave the Alchemist Alliance. Chu Mu, wait, I just received news that the Land of 5 Elements is about to appear. You can go and try your luck. Elder Li walked over and said as soon as he saw Chu Mu. Land of 5 Elements? Chu Mu was stunned. Land of 5 Elements, as the name suggests, is a place where metal, wood, water, fire, and earth gather. It grows spirit herbs of the 5 elements and can be used to refine pills of the 5 element. It has an auxiliary effect for king-level powerhouses to comprehend the laws of the 5 element. Elder Li explained, in addition to the spirit herbs of the 5 elements, there are also 5 elements ores and other treasures related to the 5 elements. So that's how it is. Chu Mu nodded. He also had thoughts of going to the Land of 5 Elements. After asking around, Chu Mu bid farewell to the 3 elders and left the Alchemist Alliance, heading in the direction of the Land of 5 Elements. Land of 5 Elements was a strange place in the West Tiger territory. It was hidden in the void all year round, and would only appear at certain times. Every time it appeared, many people would enter to try their luck and look for opportunities. After hurrying for a while, Chu Mu arrived outside the Land of 5 Elements. A dense fog covered the path. Other than Chu Mu, there were many people who rushed here. Chu Mu discovered that there were God Condensation Realm swordsmen and king-level powerhouses. The dense fog fluctuated and gradually dispersed, revealing a faintly discernible beautiful scene. "Let's go!" A sword of Gojoseon shouted. His figure flashed and he flew into the dispersed fog, entering the Land of 5 Elements. Everyone moved, scrambling to be the first to enter the Land of 5 Elements. Chu Mu was also among them. Rushing through the dense fog, it took about 10 breaths of time to enter the Land of 5 Elements. Upon entering the Land of 5 Elements, the first impression was color. There were only 5 colors: gold for the metal element, green for the wood element, blue for the water element, red for the fire element and brown for the earth element. The second impression was aura. The 5 types of aura of the 5 elements were fluctuating. The sharp aura of the metal element, the vital aura of the wood element, the gentle aura of the water element, the scorching aura of the fire element, and the heavy aura of the earth element. The 5 types of aura corresponded with the 5 colors, making this place incomparably mysterious. Other than the 5 colors and the 5 elements' aura fluctuation, there was not the slightest bit of aura fluctuation. Chu Mu discovered that the profound of the 5 elements in his spiritual world had become abnormally active. As long as it was released, its power would be stronger than outside. As for the other profound, it was as if they had lost their vitality. There was not the slightest bit of vitality, like a dead fish. Even if they were used, the power would be greatly inferior to outside. Worthy of being called the land of 5 elements, Chu Mu thought to himself. The land of 5 elements was not small, and its appearance pattern was not fixed. Sometimes it would appear after a few decades, sometimes it would appear after a few hundred years. When it did not appear, it would hide in the void. The stones, metals, and all kinds of spirit herbs in the land of 5 elements had been nourished by the power of the 5 elements for a long time, and had not been damaged for dozens or hundreds of years. Not long after entering the land of 5 elements, Chu Mu discovered a stalk of golden herb. It grew perfectly straight, with a sharp tip like a sword, emitting a sharp aura. Metal elemental grass. The corresponding image appeared in Chu Mu's mind. It was the same as the golden sword-shaped grass. When Chu Mu first saw it, someone had already approached that stalk of metal elemental grass and picked it up. Chu Mu did not have the intention to fight for it, because that stalk of metal elemental grass was not very old. It was only a dozen years old. A dozen years old metal elemental grass was not very valuable. However, not far away, someone had already made a move. They pulled out their swords and engaged in a life-and-death battle. Their goal was to snatch 100-years-old fire elemental grass. Chu Mu would not participate in this kind of battle, because everyone had just entered the land of 5 elements. According to the previous pattern, the land of 5 elements would appear for 3 months, so there was still time to search for it. He did not want to waste time fighting for 100-years-old herb. Everyone's speed was very fast, and they all went to places with fewer people to search for spirit herbs and ores. Chu Mu quickly ran in the land of 5 elements, and spread out his spirit sense, covering the surroundings. After a while, Chu Mu began to have his first harvest, 100-years-old water elemental grass. It was not that Chu Mu had not seen other spirit herbs, but that he did not want to pick them. Spirit herbs under 100 years old did not have much value. Perhaps when other swordsmen saw spirit herbs, they would pick them all regardless of their age. However, as an alchemist, he understood deeply. Especially the more skilled an alchemist was, the more he understood that spirit herbs under 100 years old did not have much value in refining pills. A stalk of spirit herb had to be at least 100 years old, and its medicinal power could be used to refine better pills when refining pills. Only then would it have its effects. This was the first point. The second point was to drain the pond to catch all the fish. If one did not even let go of spirit herbs under 100 years old, it would be like draining the pond to catch all the fish. It would be better to let them go and let them continue to grow. When the land of 5 elements appeared again, they would be at least 100 years old, and then they would have value to be picked. As they continued to go deeper into the land of 5 elements, their harvest increased. Chu Mu plucked spirit herbs that were at least 100 years old, and he also found some ores. There were many swordsmen who entered the land of 5 elements, at least tens of thousands. The land of 5 elements was indeed very big. As they went down, they gradually separated from the others. Chu Mu did not encounter anyone else, so he did not have to fight with other swordsmen for spirit herbs and so on.